Hey, welcome to another episode of Bants with me. Thank you for your feedback. I think I will be recording a few more of these. The reception of the first episode with Jackson was really great. This episode has a workmate, colleague, friend, Tom Mooney, an author. Just an all-around good guy. He's a level designer at Grinding Gear. Tom, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Hello. It's nice to be here. I was super interested in Jackson's talk, so when Sav invited me to have a stab at it, I was quite keen.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff we're talking about is on the topic of art and ideas and personal adventures.
And interests.
It's hard to describe for the benefit of other people. Like, we're conscious that we know each other reasonably, and that other people may have no clue where we're coming from.
Yeah.
But we're trying to get across some of the ideas and inspirations that we have. And I just thank Sav for allowing me time to soak out ideas in a long format.
Yeah, and it was awesome to have you on. Thank you, Tom.
Take it away.
Do we want to start from the start, or do you want to...
What is the start, though?
The start would be your beginning.
No, I don't know about that.
You don't want to talk about it?
Probably just about who I am like now, right? Or what am I doing now?
If you think that's... I think the actual beats, you know, you've travelled, you've taught, I bet the 3D scene was like completely different when you were growing up.
Yeah.
You don't think that's interesting to talk about? Do you have something on your mind? Like, there is an elephant in the room, and maybe we want to just talk about that.
Talk about that. That would be good, but not immediately, right?
Yeah.
I'm interested to talk about that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to talk more about internal concerns and worries and like stuff that might actually be interesting for people to feel some tension about, as opposed to my past, which is like almost like this fictional story from 30 years ago that's like, so I mean, even I have trouble remembering stuff.
That's cool, just whatever you do remember.
Yeah.
I still think that's really interesting that because you grew up in Dunedin.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's the thing I want to talk about is like, okay, if you don't know a thing I'm talking about, that can be tricky, right? Like, let's say you've never been to Dunedin and I start rambling on about Dunedin. You won't have any frame of reference for what I'm saying.
That's fine. You can keep going into describing Dunedin. It's fine. I don't need the frame of reference. You just give me whatever you feel is necessary for your story.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, like you grew up you were born in Dunedin. You grew up there.
Have we started?
We have started.
Oh, geez.
We started like 10 minutes ago.
You tricked me.
I lure you into like a false sense of security.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about you.
So you don't have like
a gong?
Hi, I'm Saveun, this is the podcast and you're on...
We do that right at the end.
Oh, I see.
And
you cut it up and play around with it.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you heard the Jackson episode, but...
Yeah, I did. And I realised that you'd done a little post-record thing.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to do a similar thing with this one.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wasn't sure whether I should be talking in the right register or whatever.
One thing I've noticed is that people are nervous when I do that shit. And I also, like, put myself in a very nerve-wracking state.
Yeah, well, most of the interviews I've ever seen, people that have, like, a little sheet of notes and stuff, so they don't sit around going, and, well, now we're talking about something like that. So I think that's a good thing to do. But if you don't have it, we don't need to worry about it. I mean, we just covered some topics to talk about. So
yeah,
I guess since we started, let's talk about what I'm doing now. So for 5 years, as opposed to your 10 years, I've been doing game making.
Yeah, you've been working at Path of Grinding Gear.
Yeah, and in the studio kind of scheme where someone else kind of determines what this game is about, and you're there to help it come about. You know.
Yeah.
And so, like, okay, before I was doing that, I had some game experience, but it was nothing quite as, like, you know, let's say industrial. Like,
what do you mean by that?
Like, there was more. They weren't exactly indie companies because they were commercial games.
Yeah.
But they were small scale.
I see.
And they were.
You wore many hats.
Yeah, and even I was a novice, much more,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff.
What before Grinding Gear? What was that like? How large was the studio? Can you talk about what you were working on?
Yeah, so for games, it's in three main categories.
Mm.
There's like Russia, where they had almost like guys doing it for the love of it, for almost no pay. Like,
Awesome. Okay.
barely,
But there was a lot of passion.
barely
Yeah.
enough to live on.
Yeah.
And even in Russia's cheap, barely enough to live on.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, yeah, I'm finally doing this thing I wanted to do when I was
Awesome.
when I was younger, right? And like they were very great guys to work with, and
Yeah.
they did some interesting stuff. But it felt very, building a ladder as you go kind of thing.
Okay.
And they had
like the technology was moving as you were developing the game.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, and the kind of game they were making is not around now, really. It's like maybe on like indie games on Steam.
Yeah.
So like those kind of point and click story adventures.
Yeah,
Where you have like a background.
Yes.
Really beautifully rendered by some painter or whatever, with a
Yeah.
little bit of 3D elements split, so
Mm-hmm.
it has depth. But and then you might have a 3D model of a character superimposed into that.
Yeah.
And it might move, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
say stuff.
Yeah. I know the ones.
But mostly it's like a text-based dialogue clicker adventure
Mm-hmm.
with like points on the screen where you can interact.
Yeah, and the mouse cursor would change when you went over an area of interest.
Yeah,
That kind of thing.
Yeah, very much like King's Quest and
Mhm.
Space Quest, that kind of stuff. But it was with a Russian context.
Yeah.
So it was actually kind of crazy. The guy who was the founder of the studio was an author, and his book was somewhat popular enough that he could build a studio.
That's cool. How many staff were
They
there?
had 50 people maybe. I'm not even sure, because there was lots of them. And I only dealt with like 4 people in the whole place, but animation stuff.
Yeah.
And so this guy was relatively popular. It looked like a young adult sci-fi book. And so he was the boss that everybody knew about. The publisher was 1C, which is a very big publisher for Russia. And our QA manager guy, Alex, was from there. Right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, but every Russian company seems to have this mafia kind of crossover kind of thing going on.
Huh.
So they had this other guy who was a boss who was like kind of the money guy. And he was super mafia looking and very...
Describe this guy. He's got a mustache.
looks like a bouncer, very much in the sense of like...
He's intimidating.
Yeah, like a movie character, Russian guy.
Yeah.
Kind of, he never spoke to me the whole time, but, looked at me funny, like who's this foreign guy?
Jeez.
And when I left, I was like, can I have some money? Because I'm leaving.
To that guy?
And he was just silently give me some money and I'll leave.
Yeah, he pulled out this roll of hundreds.
Yeah, exactly like that. So it's my last salary, I'm off, and he was like, oh, sorry.
He apologized to you.
Because English was even more limited than my Russian, which was almost nothing. So it's kind of a very strange and surreal moment.
How long were you there for?
Well, I worked... Okay, that game was like a year, maybe, I'm not sure, something like that. But I worked in a little TV studio, which was equally weird.
Yeah.
Mosfilm, which is the big film studio that Russia's famous for, they have an animation unit, actually, which is not well known.
How did you even get there?
Oh, to Russia at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so
because
when I graduated art school,
Yeah.
I worked in a little documentary animation job and didn't like it. And so I said, all right, I'm going overseas. To see.
That was in New Zealand.
Yeah, because I wanted to do game stuff, right?
Yeah.
In the past, there was this thing called happypuppy.com, which was like a job board for game industry.
Right.
It's long been replaced by equivalent things.
Yeah.
I guess you'd go to ArtStation jobs now. So I went from art school to a little job, didn't like it, went overseas with no money whatsoever, going, I can make it. And
Wow.
In London, I had some job applications and went to some job interviews, but I didn't really land on anything because I was kind of totally out of school noob, right?
Yeah.
And
How old were you at the time?
Oh,
Early 20s.
early 20s, yeah. Not like you getting a job out of school because you're good. I had graduated, but was still not very good.
Wait, what do you know about me, man?
Well, you got a job at Grinding Gear Games out of school, so doesn't that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. But how do you know I was good?
Well,
I could tell you,
it's worked out well for you, right?
I don't think I'm like fantastic now.
No, you're doing fine. I don't want to lose track of where I was at.
sorry, you're in London.
Yeah, so I was in London and I actually worked at a backpackers cleaning,
Yeah.
like for a place to stay, which went on for quite a while. Because like if all you're doing is cleaning and going for a walk and then like cleaning in the evening again, and there's a day that you're not making any money, but you're surviving. So, I shed lots of weight and I barely sustained an existence for quite a while. And then one day I saw an ad for an English teaching thing in Russia, so I phoned them up. And so I talked to this guy on the phone.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, come over."
Yeah. This is the bouncer you're talking to?
No. This is an English company.
Oh, right.
That teaches in Moscow. And he was like, "Yeah, come over." And he sounded like he was from like East London or something, like Cockney guy.
Yeah. Does this sound suspicious? Like, you see a flyer for like English jobs in London?
Yeah, no, it was legit.
Okay.
And so I taught there for 6 months. Then winter started, and I was like, "This is ridiculous, right?"
Yeah.
Because there's not good salary, and you have to go through Moscow in the winter. And
well, what are the temperatures? It's like negative 40.
I don't need this.
Okay.
Because
it was so cold?
Yeah, so because I had no money, and it was so cold, right?
Yeah.
So I went back to New Zealand. I had another job just doing character animation of like, interstitial graphics in documentaries where they try to demonstrate some principle or something.
Yeah.
Like momentum of a thing, or how high can an animal jump compared to a human?
Yeah, normally a narrator is describing a thing, and
Yeah, so we did a whole series of this, me and another dude, and that was quite a fun job, and I learned a lot about character, rig, and animation there.
Was it in Maya?
No, it's in 3D Max.
Right.
There's a little story there, but I'll try to get back to the Russia part, because I think that's really the start of my career. In New Zealand, the animation stuff was kind of like, felt like study.
Yeah.
Even though it was a job, both cases that I had. For the TV stuff, it was like you were just like training.
Yeah. What year was this?
2000 to 2002 or 3.
I can tell you when I studied in 2005, it was like the Wild West. 3D programs, people teaching it were just like winging it. It was the most... now that, there are practices and you can actually find information that would guide you a certain direction. But back then it was just people teaching you the fundamentals of 3D. It wasn't really in-depth or anything.
Yeah, you barely had the internet and you had to read books.
Yes.
Like the manual for 3D Max was this massive 9-volume, thousands and thousands of pages book, and I actually enjoyed reading it. So yeah, we didn't... I mean, the internet came out during that time and we Googled away eventually, but it took a long time before there was good tutorial content that we could access, and even maybe it was there for a long time before we knew about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like I trained myself, and those around me helped, but I never really had good training.
Yeah.
So to quickly talk about 3D Max, the guy that I worked with on the documentary jobs, he was the guy that came up with CAT, which you might not have heard of because you're a Maya guy. But 3D Max started off with this thing called Biped, which was like a built-in rig, and it was kind of cumbersome. So my colleague came up with CAT, which was a character animation toolkit, and it just blew up over... It was like a really lightweight rig, really easy to create. It's sort of a walk cycle generator inside of it.
Yeah.
So it was really easy to create creature rigs as well as human rigs, and loops of the motion. So it was a really nice motion thing for learning about motion.
I think I saw it. Is it the one where you would generate and it would put footprints down on the ground, and then you would just scrub through the timeline? Yeah,
kind
of. It would just walk
Biped had the footprint thing too.
Oh, okay.
But it just was harder to use. Right?
Okay.
So CAT actually eventually got integrated into 3D Max.
Cool. So he actually ended up working for
it was super strange path for him, and I don't know. This is meant to be like I'm talking about what I was doing, but the path of that software was crazy because it got sold to Softimage, not Autodesk.
Okay.
Right? Before Softimage got acquired, right? Softimage, if you don't know, is called XSI, and it got acquired by Autodesk, and then it got sunk, just cancelled, basically. I guess for competitive reasons. But some of the CAT thing got integrated to 3D Max eventually. Phil Taylor, who was the guy that came up with this, he went to this kind of engineering development state in Canada where they made this thing called Fabric Engine.
Okay.
Which is a little bit like Houdini, believe it or not.
Interesting.
It's for programming tools for art production, it was CG production, and it was super good.
Yeah.
But it also kind of eventually it got used a lot at the mill or really big film
production
studios,
houses.
where they might have the resources to have dedicated programmers on this really niche stuff.
Sure.
And it was super great. Like, I was like, this probably should have become like a standard, but it's hard stuff, right?
So he's there now.
No, that kind of wound it up, and he's still in Canada, I think, but he's doing his own stuff with like a little bit of like architectural visualization stuff, but in engineering direction.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So the reason why it's still interesting to talk about Cat is because in Russia, where I was working on this point-and-click adventure game, the guy that was kind of the lead was using Cat, and I was like, that's just cool. Right? So we used it. We actually used it in our production, and he developed a dialogue system for it, which was like,
very cool.
You could talk into it, and it would use all the phonemes are like the mouth shapes, right?
Yeah.
So you have a library of phonemes, and you take your audio clip, and it would make the face move.
Yeah.
So he made this cool little plugin which is just really easy to use and had smiley emojis for the icons, and and so we used that to do all the character stuff. And then like when you ship a game, they kind of put it all like into the final.
You package it.
Yeah, back CDs or whatever the fuck back then. And
floppy disk.
It turned out the dialogue compression for the animation was just like massive.
Okay.
The files are huge.
Yeah.
Bigger than the rest of the game. And so they're like, we're going to have to make it so the characters just go open mouth, close mouth.
Oh, no.
In order for it to compress.
Yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about. Because you were actually storing blend shapes for each of the mouth poses. Yeah.
So he was devastated, and he kind of got a little bit in trouble, because that's the kind of stuff a manager will blame you about, right? And I was sitting there going, phew, I'm glad I'm just the guy that does like rigs the character and makes it move its arms and walks across the screen and stuff, like basic animation.
Yeah.
So I guess like what I'm saying is technically I began as a character animator and rigger, and it's the stuff I don't do anymore. Hardly at all. Right?
I didn't know this about you.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny at GGG. I do literally no animation whatsoever.
Yeah.
And animation is actually really nice.
Yeah, of course. Have you spoken to the animators at Grinding?
No, I kind of just think you guys are using like the methods are all the same, but the computers are faster, and the complexity of what I had to do versus what they have to do is way different.
Yeah.
The thing, like when you look back at a game which was actually like, say, Tomb Raider 3, and you just go, this is ridiculously basic looking.
Yeah.
That's the time period we're talking about.
Yeah, they had like 30 bones and like their character rigs, their main character rigs.
Yeah.
Like you might have two hand poses kind of thing, holding a gun and fist.
Yeah. And even in Tomb Raider 3, they didn't even have facial expressions at all. She just runs around with a blank face.
Yeah.
Excuse me, my voice is too low.
All right, so you're in Russia.
I quite like talking about that Russian job stuff because in my mind it was quite a traumatic but useful experience.
I'm sure you learn.
Like how they say like time puts a rosy glow on the past and all that. Like, at the time it was quite.
Oh, in hindsight, you mean?
Yeah. So you're still learning even though you have bad experiences, and maybe you incur some wounds which make you, I don't know, behave a certain way, but those experiences were quite extreme, so that had an interesting outcome.
What do you mean? You're talking about pressure on you to perform, to actually...
Well, working in a studio where you're the only person, the guy I worked with, maybe like 2 or 3 people who spoke English. I literally dealt with like 1 or 2 people in the whole studio because
of the language barrier.
Nobody else spoke English. Yeah.
Right.
So I had a few jobs like that.
Yeah.
And then there's like Russia, at least 10 years ago, was harder to live in many cities in the world.
But you said you went there for a girl.
Yeah.
That must have eased you into it. Maybe you were learning Russian.
Yeah, sure, I did some Russian, but really not enough.
Didn't make it easier?
Not enough to have a conversation. Certainly. Like I learned to read.
Yeah.
I could, all that kind of stuff.
How long were you there for the second time?
I did 4 years, I think. I kind of did a little jumping around between England and my mother was English. I can go there. So, I kind of went back and forth a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never spent a whole winter in Russia.
Right. Just because it's so miserable?
Well, if you don't have to do it, you kind of just get tired of it and leave. It's like, if you've got the opportunity to go,
you take it.
You have to be pretty tied to something to really want to stay in some harsh climate or whatever, right?
What made you leave Russia? I have a feeling I know what that is.
Let's see what I remember. Okay, so I was sitting. What's his name? The Scott Robertson, the drawing guy. He does tutorials on rendering.
Okay, I don't know this guy.
Okay, so you probably have heard of him. He's got a website called drawthrough.com from like way back, and it's about drawing cars and robots and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He does these amazing tutorials on rendering shadows and light, like in perspective correctly. So I was talking, I was learning his stuff, and I was talking to this guy from Korea called Ed Lee, who was also a concept artist. Because at the time, what I wanted to do with my life was concept art. I wanted to be like the Chandler, my time.
Okay.
Chandler's a concept artist at work that is, very an up-to-date, very young guy who's going places and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I aspire to be honest. So I was learning from what I could find about concept art, and this guy Ed Lee offered me a teaching job in Korea.
Yeah.
So I was like, fuck Moscow.
You just looked at the climate and you were like, yeah, I'm out of here.
Yeah. So I never ever imagined I would go to Korea, but like when a nice job comes along, you kind of think about it, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
How long did you think about that for?
Oh, the time that it takes to prepare to change countries and like documentation and stuff like that takes like weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
The decision to actually go there was like literally immediate. I was like, yeah, this is a sweet offer, and I was like, I can't miss this. So, and it was touch and go. Like they had problems with visas, and I had to get all this documentation, proof of work for like since forever, which was really hard because I was traveling.
Yeah.
Like when you travel, like you kind of have to carry around
everything,
documentation and stuff that proves who you are.
Yeah, of course.
Not just your passport, but medical stuff or history of water bills. It's really crazy, right? It's a lot easier now because we can just put it all in Dropbox, and it's, at the time you kind of had to have in your backpack a little file
of important documents.
Yeah. So I struggled to get the job procedure completed, and that was super relief. When I actually got there, it was kind of like, this is a strange job. There's like it was one of the top 9 universities in Korea, but it felt real empty.
Okay.
Like it had just been built, but there was nobody there.
Huh.
Like it was super new. It was a beautiful place. It was up on a big mountain,
and
you could see over the whole of the city.
Yeah.
This is the city of Busan, which is south of the bottom of South Korea, right? I went to Seoul a couple of times, but it's just a different place. It's like the difference between Auckland and Christchurch.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's very pretty town. I was super happy to be there. It was great. I had good pay and all that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
But the job itself was like, this is like a storybook of teaching. It's not like real teaching. So I felt like it was a fiction.
Huh.
So it was really interesting. I taught life drawing.
Yeah. How good are you at life drawing?
I was pretty good. Like,
awesome.
It was one of the things I did at art school. It was kind of my speciality, right? I did life drawing in 3D basically.
Yeah.
Towards the end, that was the things I got into.
Wow.
Teaching life drawing, teaching 3D. I tried to persuade these Maya user guys to try out Modo.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, what the hell's this? Because it had just come out. And, they probably were like, this guy doesn't know what he's even doing.
Right, were you into Modo as well?
It was so new at the time. And I was like, I can see this is a pretty interesting software.
Yeah.
But it was really hard to persuade anybody that this was worth looking at.
Yeah,
but,
if you're tied into
Modo's
like
still around, and it has grown. It's
awesome.
Quite a robust software,
Yeah.
But it's still kind of like this, like, not very well known. It's not a giant, right? You know what I mean?
Modo is interesting because it came out, and I had a friend of mine who was convincing me to move to Modo. All the while, like Blender just kept picking up, and like Blender is that now. Like I think
I'd say that's true.
Yeah. I think if anyone's listening to this and wants to pick up 3D software, like Blender is that software, and it's really getting good.
Yeah. So Korea, I eventually left because I got a game job in Australia, The girls were involved here as well, to be honest. Not girls at like multiple girls. I mean, a girl before and a girl at that time. You know?
Yeah.
So, I got engaged, and
Wow.
we were trying to like find a place where we could.
In Korea?
Well, she came to Korea. We wanted to go to Australia and eventually New Zealand, I guess. She got refused a visa for Australia, and things kind of evaporated away, which is kind of bad.
Yeah.
But I learned a few things at the time, like, you know, when you kind of learn maybe this person's not the right person.
Because it kind of puts you
the struggle to figure shit out actually exposes.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension dealing with that.
Yeah, so I kind of had this like I don't regret that too much. Who knows what would have happened if everything is kind of like flicking towards one direction or another.
Yeah,
and it just does. And, so there's a whole pipeline of stuff that never happens.
Yeah, in a parallel universe.
Yeah, who knows? But I'm not too worried about it. So I ended up in Australia going, well, okay, girlfriend not here, but this is fine,
Yeah. Which part of Australia?
It was in Melbourne, and the game studio was Tourist Games. Hello, Tourist Games. They do, they're still around. They do licensed games for, like we did Monster Jam. You know how Monster Jam is actually a TV show?
I haven't heard of it.
Monster Jam's big trucks, right?
Okay.
Like
monster trucks.
Yeah, they have names. Like there's a dog one and
a. Okay.
I forget. But
is it like a children's TV show?
No. It's like redneck Americans watching super over the top cars crashing and stuff like that.
Okay, it's like Destruction Derby type thing?
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So these trucks have personalities that get continued and licensed through different products.
Right.
I can't remember any of the names of them. They had a guy that was just doing the trucks, right? And he was really good. He was literally making like photo real models of the trucks and covering them with the dirt, that's procedural dirt that gets put on depending on how you're driving. Right?
Yeah, that's cool.
One guy did all that. I did the terrain, right? So there was like 3 or 4 guys doing terrain. There was a guy called Dave Biggs who was like just this genius that sat next to me and told me what to do. I was
awesome.
Like, sweet.
You would have learned a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So I was kind of like the junior 3D environment artist, and the level of their studio was pretty junior.
Yeah.
They supported me quite a lot, and it was great. Can't remember why I left from there. Oh, I went. My girlfriend, my fiance at the time, we said, okay, she got refused a visa here. So
here in New Zealand?
No, in Australia.
Right.
So we're like, we'll just meet up somewhere where you can go.
Yeah.
And so she was from Uzbekistan, right?
Yeah.
And she's in Montreal now. But the list of countries that someone from Uzbekistan can go to without complicated visa arrangements was really small. It's like
that sucks.
It's like Colombia and
Malaysia. You can count them on one hand.
Yeah, literally a few. So I was like, I never really imagined I'd go to Malaysia, but we'll go on a holiday there.
Cool. Okay.
So that was good. We spent like 2 months roaming around Malaysia.
Yeah.
I was looking at the money going down, going, oh shit, I don't have a job now. So, we shipped the Monster Jam game. This is a bit still just delaying back in Australia. We shipped the Monster Jam game, and they started doing a zoo hospital game. Zoo hospital is still a thing. Like, you still get these games now. But I was like, I don't really want to do that. So I kind of said to the boss, like, I'll go on holiday, but don't expect me to come back and everything. And he was like, yep, that's cool. You're all good.
This is just off the back of them announcing that they're going to work on this zoo animal game. You're just like, I don't want anything to do with this game, and you bounced? Just based on what they were working on?
In effect, yes.
Man, okay.
Yeah.
But you would have had like great relationships with, the team, right?
Well, my feeling about games is like, I don't play a lot of games. I'm very picky, let's say, on the kind of games I want to play. And it's the same with the games I want to make. Like, I mean, actually, I've kind of diverged out a little bit lately. But like if you want to make a mobile phone game with like, what are they called?
The tower defense.
3-line games, Candy Crush and stuff.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
okay.
If someone offers me to make a game like that as a job, I'd just like, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
Well, how does that work?
Even if Candy Crush was like, hey Tom, we got the perfect job for you. You can be an environment artist.
Yeah. King, which is the company that does Candy Crush, is always hiring, and they're actually a massive company. So, yeah. Actually, Digital Confectioners in Christchurch is hiring for a Candy Crush style. There's a name for this kind of game. It's like
it's a match 3.
Match 3 is they're hiring for a level designer. I was like, what? A level designer for a match 3 game. Like, what is the world coming to?
Those are the guys based in Christchurch,
I guess they mean backgrounds. Yeah, I'm kind of I wouldn't say friends because I've never met him in person, but the James Tan, who was an Unreal kind of evangelist, or he was in the documentation team. He's a good programmer. He troubleshooted a bunch of stuff on my little pet project. Yeah. And he was very helpful and nice. And yeah, I talked to him. I even interviewed for another job they had there way back ago. And their art director wasn't interested in it. But he was nice to talk to. Yeah. So yeah, I think that would have been kind of, the trousers of time. It's like, the divergent one way or another. Yeah. Who knows what could happen.
I think I met those guys.
Like Cam, Cam was a guy at work that is no longer at work, but associate also knew him, and so we were all talking about this stuff. Yeah, the New Zealand game industry is quite interconnected. Yeah. So I ended up in Malaysia. I got a job teaching. I literally looked in the newspaper for what are the universities here. The game companies were like nothing much to speak about, although they are now.
In New Zealand?
In Malaysia.
Oh, right.
Kuala Lumpur in particular.
Yeah.
I was like, what are the job options here? And I sort of think, okay, there's a design college, like, from our hotel, like, literally 500 meters away. I'll just go say, hey, how can I apply for work here? So I did.
Yeah. And that worked out?
The dude just comes out. This is the boss guy of the company. Right?
Yeah.
He just comes out and says, here's a form, please fill this in. I've got to go do something. Yeah. I'll come back. Yeah. So I said, all the students and stuff. My girlfriend, or fiance at the time, she's very lovely, right? The kind of girl that guys kind of get.
What are you trying to say?
It's embarrassing to have a girlfriend who's too attractive because we're guys, and you're constantly like, holy crap. So all the students, like all these fashion design students and interior design students and stuff, they're all walking by going, oh, she looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, that oogling her.
Yeah, oogling her, totally. And it's like, I was like, this is bizarre.
Yeah.
So I kind of think I got that job because
she
made a stir. yeah. I mean, she was a Russian model, kind of objectified woman, enjoying her life. I was super surprised that I just rang the guy up a few days later. Said, "Also, how did that
application go?"
He said, "Yeah, we'll offer you a job." And I was like, "Sweet." And so,
what was on this application? It was just like,
I don't remember too much. It was like
date of birth, address.
What jobs you had in the past?
Oh, okay.
What do you want to teach? Are you good at teaching these topics? Basically.
Okay.
Like interest forms. Are you interested in this and this and this?
Yeah,
like that. But it was like topics of what they teach. Yeah. Right. So can you teach visual communication? Can you teach interior design? Within the interior design, can you teach like AutoCAD?
I struggle to fill those.
I just tick the boxes for the stuff I could. Yeah. And yeah.
But were you kind of like, yeah, I guess I could teach interior design, not knowing anything about interior design?
No. I just stuck to what I knew.
Okay.
They were hiring for basically a little group of people that wanted to do game design. Yeah. So that was great.
Yeah, that's where you wanted to go.
Yeah. But what was funny is I ended up teaching rendering for jewelry, rendering for interior design. I kind of wanted to teach rendering for the fashion design students because they're nice looking girls. But I never did that. Yeah. So
everyone else would have been applying for that. Yeah. Tom.
Sort of. What else? I mean, obviously the game guys and I say guys, but like literally they had like more girls doing the game stuff than they had guys. Yeah,
it's interesting. The Asian type of game development scene is way more. What would you say? There's more of a mix of like guys and girls rather than in the West. It's very male dominated, I guess.
Yeah, I think mobile phone culture, like iPads and all that, has literally opened up the world to a whole let's say, demographic, where previously that wouldn't have been the case.
Mm.
So yeah, you get a lot more people running around of diverse backgrounds and all that.
Yeah.
Which I guess is healthy. So I wanted to talk about this and I totally forgot. But talking about the teaching rendering to different students has reminded me. You know how I mentioned about teaching Modo to these guys that did Maya in Korea? So at the time that I was in Malaysia teaching UDK and 3D Max and stuff, a renderer came out called Maxwell Render. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Sweet.
Is it Maxon?
Maxwell Render.
Okay.
It's named after James Clerk Maxwell.
Okay,
who was
sorry.
The kind of guy who solved a lot of problems in electrothermodynamics, whatever you call it, like laws of physics and stuff. And Maxwell Render is this interesting software that is using physically based rendering way before the sort of real time physically based
What's the year?
Let me think. 2010 maybe.
Okay.
Can't remember.
Dude, because
I was in that company at Kuala Lumpur. It was Raffles Design College. I guess there are many branches all over Asia.
Yeah.
They had 5 years there, right? It was quite a while out of time. So a lot of weird, diverse experiences. But teaching Maxwell Render to one student was like a super highlight. Because really I was teaching myself, right? And it's super slow.
Rendering.
It's the kind of renderer where you can leave it for
it's an offline
a few
renderer.
days.
Yeah.
And you come back and it's still quite grainy.
Yeah.
So you can look at it not quite sure
Yeah, denoising wasn't a thing.
Yeah. So me and my students, we were like, are we doing this right? Why is this taking so long? We didn't quite get the fact that our computers were useless.
Yeah.
And
you needed a supercomputer.
Yeah, they're meant to be like batch rendered and
Yep.
all that sort of bucket rendering stuff and all this kind of thing. But I learned a lot about lighting principles. You know, I mentioned about Scott Robertson teaching this course on shadow casting.
Yeah.
And he's really into like metals and reflections because he does cars and airplanes.
Yeah, of course.
And for concept art, that kind of stuff is really interesting. So I learned rendering from the point of view of someone who wanted to learn concept design.
I gotcha.
And just yesterday, I was looking at the Maxwell Render website because I thought maybe we could talk about the stuff, like what makes Maxwell Render different, and since then what's happened to it. But it's still being sold. It doesn't seem to have changed a lot lately.
Right.
Like it's up to version 5.
Yeah.
And they say, it's faster. But what it's kind of aimed at really is for people who are doing really, really large images.
Yeah.
And they want super, super accurate, like photographically accurate kind of performance of light.
Okay.
And surfaces, so displacement and refraction and diffraction.
Yeah.
All those complicated light physical properties. That you kind of have to learn about from a scientific background.
You have to get Dr. Alex on that.
Yeah, you kind of have to learn a little bit of...
Did you ever look at V-Ray? Did you ever look at other renderers? Yeah. Because V-Ray is the dominant rendering package for production houses now.
Yeah.
And everyone claims to have the best renderer, but it's very subjective.
Well, V-Ray is kind of like a fast biased renderer. Correct terminology. Not that I know a lot about the terminology, to be honest, but it's what you might call an approximate render, and it doesn't use. You know how light is a wave, and
wave and
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, it's to do with heat and how when you shine light through a prism, the colors diffract and all this kind of stuff. Right? Yeah. That's how Maxwell Render treats light.
Yeah,
I think that V-Ray and stuff like that. I've recently heard this term called a punctual light, and that's where in the 3D world, it's this infinitely bright little point light, like a Maya point light, that is like kind of an abstraction. Doesn't really exist in the real world. V-Ray kind of starts from that basis. It's a mathematically built simplification of light in order to get a quick result.
You should have said you wanted to talk about rendering because I know Corona did something with this recently.
Yeah. Corona's a really good renderer. I think Octane now is kind of like one of what I consider a leading renderer. They're doing very interesting stuff anyway.
Yeah.
And then of course there's lately it's all going into real-time renderings catching up. But if you really compare a real-time render it's good because it's fucking fast.
Yeah.
Right? Real
It's no
time.
good.
But it's no good in terms of, if you compare it to a good Maxwell render,
Yeah.
or maybe an Octane render or whatever, there's like a way different
I know.
strata of quality that
Yeah.
you can achieve. And so I was really interested in those kind of things.
Yeah.
I never really got really good at that stuff because it wasn't my job. I wasn't professionally, no one was like saying, hey, Tom, make these renders, we'll pay you money.
Yeah.
I was doing it because I liked it. So
it's really interesting because those renderers, like, to really show the difference, you need to render a pool of water kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like, but if you're rendering rocks or something, you can get away with a real-time renderer. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
if you're just...
Yeah.
Doing-
Matte surfaces or your dielectric surfaces and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, yeah.
But yeah, if you want a
even
car
I think
render...
like metals and stuff that are, if you're not asking too many questions, then like, that's fine.
Mm.
But if you want to start rendering like light going through cheese or wax or anything like that,
Yeah.
and have close-ups and then have like camera effects like depth of field and you know.
Oh yeah, like jade or anything like that. Anything with like an interior,
Yeah.
where light actually bounces through a material, then
Yeah.
those actual offline renderers are, they will show you the difference
Yeah.
of what a offline renderer can do compared to a real time renderer.
Yeah, but even so, I don't think you can. If you have Maxwell Render on a computer, more power to you if you use it.
Mm.
But you still have to do quite a lot of study on physics,
Yeah.
like light physics. I mean, before you can
To even just set up a render.
to make sense of what you're really trying to achieve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh? Because V-Ray's very much like angling to that space where you can just set up a scene, position lights here, here, and here, and hit render, and get something that is pretty good.
Yeah. Sure. Skies and like time of day was a big thing for V-Ray. I think that's a main factor in what made it, apart from speed.
Yeah.
Like having an easy to use time of day where you could like just say I want sunset, and it just kind of your camera and your sky kind of married together in a nice way.
Yeah.
I mean that's part of what made them successful.
Yeah. You studied art. What are you talking? Traditional art, oil paintings, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I went to art school with the intention of studying painting,
Yeah.
but the CG department was just way too attractive.
Yeah.
Like they had a good CG department, they had a good teacher, they had a lot of people from my group went there, and Lord of the Rings was starting to be filmed at that time.
Okay.
A couple of my senior guys, like I was like year 1, they were year 2. They graduated, went straight to Weta.
Right.
Like some funny stories, like they didn't end up doing like CG. Like one guy when he was like making goop on trolls and stuff.
Cool.
What do you call that? Like a saliva and slime guy.
Yeah.
So he was the guy that was. Another guy was the driver for like dwarves or whatever.
He was a limo driver.
He was limit. Or,
He was
Liv
the horse?
Tyler was the elf, right? And he drove her around and stuff like that.
In a car or?
Yeah. So this guy, I didn't know him too well, but his girlfriend was in my class. And
Yeah.
so one day we were at a party, and I was talking about Lord of the Rings and saying, what's it like to work there, and how do you get a job there, and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he explained the basics. He was kind of talking more about maybe the studio stuff as opposed to the CG stuff.
Yeah.
And he was going, basically they hire people that they think they'll get along well with,
Yeah.
because nobody wants to work with a cunt.
Yeah. Of course.
And I was like, but how do you know if you're a cunt?
And he's like, Tom, I'm going to stop this conversation right here.
Kind of, because like I quite liked his girlfriend, and so I was like, damn it. So yeah,
You had a hard look at yourself that evening.
that was a really awkward one. This is the kind of shit that sticks in my mind, and years later I'm like going, no. But
Yeah.
life-defining kind of moments.
Did you ever figure out the answer to that question?
So yeah, I think he was right though, right? Like your knowledge or skill at a particular technical task matters hugely, but you can learn it.
Yeah.
And once you start off doing any job, no matter games or whatever, you'll probably like a year or two later be doing something else. You kind of have to train and retrain and just kind of slide around.
Interesting.
Whereas your communication with people is going to persist through the group, and it matters a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
So I didn't appreciate that stuff until I started GDG, to be honest.
really.
Yeah. So I talked to people about it, Because communication is not my for strength, whatever you call that.
Forte?
Forte. not at all. So I was kind of like, I need to learn this. So I did it like a Udemy course, which I think was one of the things that I really found most directional.
Yeah.
It gave me a kind of framework to work off of.
Yeah.
And GDC talks are helpful. I think I've shown you a few GDC talks.
Yeah,
talks I liked. Yeah.
Zen, the art of game development or something.
There was a leadership one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another one, that production one that you didn't really like.
Wait, which one?
remember I was saying this guy talking about producers is really good talk, and you're like, this guy looks like a joker.
I have to go back to it.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's just kind of like, I guess I felt like certain windows or lenses got added to my toolkit from that kind of stuff. And, like, mainly learning how to be sensitive to like what someone else's point of view might be on your take on stuff is kind of important.
You learned that while at GGG.
Yeah, I learned to appreciate it, and maybe like I guess what I've been trying to push for a little bit is jobs where that becomes a factor or a feature of your job.
Yeah.
As opposed to like say a concept artist or a 3D modeler or a level designer, they kind of focused on the task requirements, and they don't really have to worry about
issue management.
Yeah, people management,
time management, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So some of the criticism that came through our level design department was to do with time management and like communication clearly and efficiency and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, yeah, I want to figure out some details.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to put into practice a little bit of this. But like the reality is often you come to work and you're locking into the computer and you don't really maybe talk to anybody for a day. Like that can happen, right? And then you have other days where you spend a lot of time talking things through.
Yeah.
I started to go like, I'm not so interested in sitting at the computer silently. I mean, you do it because you have to. It's like the job, the task needs to be done. But I started going like, I actually find the talking part more interesting.
Yeah.
Like as a point of stress though, like handling the confusion of trying to figure out someone else's thought process is really hard.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Even though you practice it and think you're getting good at it, you may completely. Someone may say something that's important to them that doesn't sound important for some reason.
Yeah.
And can go over your head and all those kind of things. They really matter.
Yeah.
Okay, but now we can maybe start talking about the dramatic stuff, the recent events.
Yeah, should we just tell people
we'll just
what's
blast
happening?
into it? Yeah. So I talked to Mark II a lot in the evenings when everyone else had gone home.
Yeah.
And I got real interested in the way he works.
Yeah.
Mark II is a producer in the company, and he's now one of the leads of the whole company. Right? And I noticed that he was like super task focused. Maybe like he's like deeply caring about the studio as a whole. And like he'll grind whatever grist the mill requires to get the product out to the players, all that kind of thing, because that's what we have to do. So one day you'll talk to him and he'll be super nice, and the next day he'll be super busy and not so nice. And you can't like distract a busy person. So it's kind of I started watching how he interacted with other people and all this kind of stuff. Reese is also lead programmer, is another guy I kind of watched quite carefully, to make some comparisons. And
you're looking at leadership. You want to see how they talk with people and interact with people.
Yeah. So I have this theory about GGG in particular, is that it's like a medieval monastery.
Keep going.
And although that sounds a little weird and funny, I think it's super accurate. Because how a medieval monastery worked is you take a bunch of experts and pretty much imprison them inside of stone walls. They would have to live together and work together, and there'd be experts at their field.
Yeah.
And they'd live according to some ideals and policies and all that kind of stuff. And they'd also be trying to ship material. Like, medieval monks were into illumination of manuscripts and all this kind of religious stuff. But so we're into computer games. It's like the materials. It's like an intellectual pursuit, right? And you'd get these topic specialists, like let's say a guy who knows Greek, let's say lots of different languages, right?
Sure.
And we have programming languages,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So it's this kind of thing. And you're kind of secluded off from society, but
Like an office.
the analogy kind of rubs away a little bit, and you start talking about like, oh, everyone's got wives and stuff, but you know, there's a lot of
Parallels.
a lot of parallels, yeah.
Mm. So yeah, you were starting to make these comparisons.
Yeah.
With the way Mark II and Reese were just handling.
Well, the way I think of Mark II is like a kind of industrial revolution kind of factory leader, where he's kind of the commander of a workforce, or commander of an army of workers, let's say. And then there's a guy like Reese who's very... Some of my friends use the word celestial. Cerebral is probably the word I would use, but he's always super fucking calm and unfazed by any troubles. So I always admired this, right?
Yeah.
And when he talks, he communicates very clearly, which I also admire because I don't. You know, and he can solve problems that just literally grind, good term. Everybody else would be stuck on this thing. He'll just sit down and figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, since I first began in the company, I've been working under him, I sat next to him, and
you work directly with him. As a level designer, you're reliant on the tool that
he's a tools developer, but this is kind of like also has a strong founder history in the game that I don't have, right? And you know, me coming into GGG, I felt like I was coming in the middle period. Like I'm not a founded guy, and I'm not quite as invested in the story. I liked Path of Exile when I first came across it.
Yeah,
I was like, a New Zealand game, sweet. This game's fun to run around in. But my interest is not the kind of interest that maybe a serious player of the game has, right?
Yeah.
I'm playing it for like, oh, the scenery is nice.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a terrain maker, right? So I like, oh, these trees are nice atmosphere here, or the mood is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not too worried about like my skills or how many monsters I can kill. Stuff like that. One of the things that's nice about working in a game company is you can run around in the game with like undying mode, so like no one can kill you. So all those problems go away. So you stop caring about your gear and stuff, because like for my job it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like if you're the guy like Dane who makes gear and weapons, then that's a different story completely. Sure. The Dane stuff is amazing as well.
Yeah.
Like I guess he has a Dark Souls.
He loves the genre, so he's into like the dark fantasy kind of thing.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is like I went through this period, like I wanted to produce not so much what the game is about, but I want to be involved in the control of the workflow. Right? And like Jackson, who we talked to last week, is also interested in this stuff from some sort of pipeline point of view. Yeah. Making stuff more efficient. He's into doing that through automation and scripts and stuff. I'm into more of the, like, strategy on tasks to do, figuring out who does what. Yeah. Not
a producer type role.
Not necessarily. I don't think the producer sits down and says, oh, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It's more like you go sit down with people and they figure out what they're going to do, and then you just kind of write it down.
Is that the role that you're kind of pursuing? Is that?
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. In future work, you know. So I had to talk to Chris about this stuff. We did like reviews and all this kind of stuff, and it kind of came up.
That you just weren't happy with?
Yeah, last year they offered me lead level designer, and I was kind of, well, there's only 4 of us. We don't need a lead level designer. We're all doing our jobs well. Yeah. The interesting part of it is more to do with like, how does the level design actually go out into the rest of the company? Yeah. And needs gathering and all that kind of stuff. Tracking what's going on. Like, why did this thing take fucking ages? Yeah. That kind of stuff. I'm really interested in that. Okay, another facet of this is like, okay, Sav will come over. This is Saveun, the lead technical guy. And he'll say, why are you doing this texture nonsense? It's like, you know, we have outsourcers for this, or we have an environment team that should be doing that. What? So I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to be sitting down pushing vertexes around and correcting a UV thing or whatever. It's like, I now have too much things to do. And although often, like, going back into a Maya scene and vertex pushing around on a tile is a good way to wind down a little.
It is therapeutic in a way.
Yeah. I think I've fallen into the trap of that a little too much.
Right.
So in the last year, I've actually, you probably noticed, right? I went way away from doing so much art stuff.
Yeah, like looking back on it now, yes.
A level designer does a lot of like working with other people's art.
Mm.
I don't mind breaking a model into a few parts to get some variance, but I don't really want to be doing the art now.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got offered a job in Europe where they're doing the kind of game which is a little different to Path of Exile, where instead of our game is completely based around the idea of kind of a, let's say, procedural generated level, which means that every time you run it, it calculates it
That's
out.
one of the main hooks of Path of Exile.
Yeah. So the good thing about it is you get a different experience. If you play thousands of hours, and it averages out, right? But the thing about the procedural level is that you get a bunch of restrictions on how things have to be.
Of course,
right?
yeah.
And the technical hurdles and stuff that can sometimes be quite big. For example, having a very tall level looking down in our game is still a bit of a trouble.
Yeah.
And so if you look at like UDK and stuff like this, where they tend to focus more on, I mean, they don't have to, but often they'll make games where the level is static. Like Ghost Recon is a good example. I really like that game. They have like, I don't know how many kilometers of map, and there's a lot of procedural generation.
Yeah.
But once it's generated, it's static, and they build upon that. So I was like, I kind of want to work on that kind of game.
Yeah, one where you can actually art direct certain things. You can actually put features in certain places. You can direct landscapes, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to stop you because last Christmas you and I went out, had lunch, and we were talking about this kind of stuff. And it was things of like, where do you want to be in your career?
Yeah,
and
I remember that. That was traumatic.
Was it? Well, because I was...
You're like, what do you want to do with yourself, Tom? I was like, well, why are you asking?
I feel like goals are very important for an individual.
Yeah.
So when you didn't respond, like, what do you do?
Yeah. Well, at the time I was just quite confused and playing my cards close to my chest because I didn't.
You didn't know what you were going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Okay, so in your heart of hearts, you have a thing you want to do.
Yeah.
But then reality kind of teaches you different.
Yeah.
You know? Like when I was young, I was super. I like Edgar Degas style artist who is completely self-sufficient.
Yeah.
It maybe has a modest life, but they do their own thing. Right?
Yeah.
They're completely in control of their art and they just do it. I mean, that's the ideal for me, but I think
he lives in a log cabin just in the middle of nowhere.
Well, he lived in Paris and had a housekeeper that looked after him, grew old and died, right?
Yeah, okay.
The outcome is always going to be the same, but I think I would be a homeless person living in a cave pretty quickly.
Pursuing the thing that you want to do?
Yeah. And I don't know. I could...
With your wake on.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never been ballsy enough to really try doing that. I mean, I've done personal projects and stuff, but they've always been more hobbycraft.
Yeah.
Tinkering around.
Yeah.
So professionally, I've only ever got game jobs, right?
Yeah.
I was quite interested in film industry stuff, but I kind of want to be the guy that hires a film studio to make what I want, not to work in a film studio.
Yeah.
And that I don't have money for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a reality telling you this isn't how things work.
A lot of
situation,
people,
right?
when they do that kind of stuff, they go out and film things on their own, and they'll learn, compositing a thing onto live action.
Yeah.
Putting that out there. That's definitely a thing people do.
I did all the compositing and filming and stuff in my 20s and 30s. Yeah, games just seems to pay better.
For me, it wasn't even like I did that when in the mid 2005 around there, but it was very clear to me at the time that video games and the interactive medium was going to be way better than whatever film could do.
Yeah,
just in terms of storytelling. That's just me.
Yeah, I think games has slightly calcified into this like RPG versus sci-fi versus maybe war game kind of polarity, if that's the right word. Where it doesn't have to be that way at all. Like, I think it's to do with market-driven stuff and publishing kind of interests more than what players really would play if they had different options out there.
What do you mean? You're just talking about the genres are very...
Well, if you compare like the experience of going to a really good film and the experience of playing a good game, the good games are all really similar in format.
Yeah, you're talking about AAA games, just like action games. You murder everyone.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I like playing Ghost Recon and snipering someone and all that, but I'm not super like, this game must be about killing or I'm not playing it.
Yeah.
That kind of thinking is like surprisingly strong, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. Games with stories and, let's say, depth is still something where there's so much more possibility that will come.
Yeah.
Like, you know how you look back at, I mentioned Tomb Raider earlier, and you look back at it and you think, this is really clunky, and we will be looking back in 10, 20, 20 years at the stuff that is considered great now and just going, that was so rudimentary. And not just in graphics. I mean in like
the way
presentation and let's say the game loop or the architecture.
Sure.
That we'll just be like, oh, this is so bulky.
I agree.
Cumbersome.
I agree.
You know, I'll be old by then. I mean, I already feel quite old. But
Hey, I feel pretty old too.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to Europe, and it's super interesting to go through the process from not even to do with the work, because I don't know what they're going to get me to do, right? But the process of changing countries, you know, relocating, I guess is the technical term. It is like the most hard thing in the world. Like, you don't do it often, probably. Like, for most people, it's rare if they ever even do it.
Yeah.
And there's no lessons, right? You have to read a lot.
Figure it out.
Yeah, you have to look at a lot of stuff and go, is this even the right thing to be looking at? You know, I've hired people to help me because it's so hard.
Are they not helping you, the guys that...
Yeah, they're.
Okay.
So it's in multi-stage. It's like rocket launch kind of shit. It's literally that amount of involvement. Like, there's a stage for pre-launch, and there's launch, and there's arrival, and you know, and then there's recovery of the debris.
And now, I know when you...
It's hard, and I have pets as well. So pet travel is probably like times 1,000 difficulty. Like, it is really hard. And now we also have COVID all over the world.
Of course, and so
imagine what's going through my mind lately. You know? So I'm trying to keep on top of it. The timing is critical, and the doing shit right is critical. You know, people who are business travelers probably think, it's easy, but you know, if you have a skateboard, right, and it's worth like $1,000, electric skateboard, I mean, and it's worth $1,000, you kind of go, I can't really take this with me. I have to sell it. Like, and then you have to go through the process of selling something, and that's not. I mean, that doesn't take no time, right? So giving stuff away, selling it, just like, maybe I have to package this, and there's like so many things. Yeah. And then you're still working during all that, right? And then you're trying to prepare yourself for this next job, so you're fresh on arrival. Yeah, okay. And so really worried that I'll land and just go, bleh, I'm done.
Dude, I'm sure they'll give you like a grace period.
Yeah.
They'll show you the ropes.
Yeah, I think so. But in the past, like, I was a very light traveler. I didn't have any stuff.
Just a backpack.
Moving my dogs from Malaysia to New Zealand was like stressful in sort of like, it was handled well in the arrangements, but it was hard because, like, you know, your dog can die
just in the airplane,
or even in quarantine or whatever.
Right. How long are you away from your dog for?
That was like 3 months.
Jeez.
Yeah, because when you're entering New Zealand, there's quarantine. Like, if you're going from New Zealand to Europe, there's no quarantine, but there's a lot more limits on when you can go.
Yeah.
And then the price is quite high, you know.
Why is the pet situation like that? Is it just to...
Well, it's to do with live cargo and animal welfare. Like, they really try to ship in these animals cannot die kind of a process, right? So they're trying real hard to do everything right. Yeah. There's a lot of I went to the vet on Friday, for example. Right? Yeah. There's a lot of medicals. They have to do vaccinations, and the weird thing is, you go to the vet and they don't seem to know what the fuck is going on. Like, the steps are kind of hard, and so they'll send you to somebody else, and it's okay. And then it's like, you have to go to this approved vet. Like, government regulations require you to go to a certain doctor for a human for the medical check for a visa. Same with pets. You have to go to an approved government regulated vet to get medical check done. So you have to find this out. And you know how, like, when you look online for information, you just get all the information for the keywords you search for. So you'll be like, in the USA, you'll be getting all the USA results amongst the stuff you look. It's like, oh damn. Yeah. So you can spend nights trying to figure out, am I even looking at the right stuff here?
Yeah.
So it took me quite a while to nail it down. But it's all working currently.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I'm at the stage where it's now like pay for it, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. The launch, the rocket is on the launch pad kind of situation.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
But yeah, the actual flight hasn't happened yet, so that's the scary part. And for the dogs, it's super scary.
Yeah. Are you away from them now?
I go on the 1st of December. They go on the 8th.
Okay.
So I'm there ready when they get there.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's like a pets transport service that handles the process.
Have you? Are you open to talk about where you're gonna work?
Yeah, sure. The studio we're working, they did Divinity Original Sin series, and they just released Baldur's Gate, which looks like they're going to do in acts, the way Path of Exile's done in acts.
Very cool.
I've played it quite a lot, like 40 hours, maybe.
Yeah.
And I like it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, did they do the whole generating large environments?
Yep.
No randomization?
No, I mean...
They do have dungeons still?
Yeah, part of the way that game works is that you are going through the same terrain, but the story changes because you maybe play as a different character.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's also like dialogue decision based.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, I try to intimidate you.
Yeah.
And it fails.
Yeah. You'll be rolling for it, kind of thing.
You'll go down a different path. You know, just talk about trousers at a time, and the whole like your life changes depending on like little variables. It's a lot like that. Right? So I kind of like that. I'm not super into D&D. It's based on a D&D franchise, but their style of games, it's already established. The earlier games.
Yeah. The
D&D stuff is more to do with like what kind of characters there are, and I've learned a lot about D&D since getting the job. Because I thought I'd be able to learn the details.
Yeah,
of it.
It's not big in New Zealand. D&D.
Well, we have a group at work that sits down and role plays.
I wasn't really aware of it until Stranger Things came out.
Right.
And then after seeing that, I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is the thing that everyone was talking about. And then we played, and there were podcasts about it and this kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so YouTube has kind of made it a big thing for the social element of D&D. I think that the flavor of D&D lore or whatever has always been kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Like, it's very
generic.
Lord of the Rings-y generic kind of rip-offy plagiaristic stuff, and that's fine. Everybody gets
magic,
it.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. And they have minutiae of detail the way that Path of Exile has lore and all that. You can, if you're really into like baseball card collections and you want to learn like all the dates of all the players, and you can do that with
Baldur's Gate,
all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So lost the thread a little bit.
We're just talking about your new studio.
Look, you mentioned that D&D is not that popular in New Zealand, right? So when I was a kid, there was more book kind of thing where you would
choose your own adventures.
Choose your own adventures. Fighting fantasy was like the famous one, and there was also a few like, let's say, young adult kind of variants on this kind of format. And I had a few of those, and I internalized them in a sort of by myself kind of way.
Yeah.
I grew up in the country, like not even a town in the country, like
just way off in the country.
Yeah. Like animals and stuff around.
Yeah. Okay. On a farm.
Yeah. So my family, I inherited books and stuff down the tree, you know, and so Narnia and Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff. Lots of adult books I got, like, kind of came my way early. Maybe like I was a strong reader, young kind of deal.
Yeah. Okay.
So like a D&D campaign thing, like a dungeon master manual and all that. I kind of never played the game with people the way that it's meant to be.
Oh right, you were just reading like the start to finish of the book.
I was just looking at the manuals again. This stuff's cool. I like it.
Yeah.
And just from my point of view, this is I was attracted to it. And games like the CRPG. I was just like, well, this is even better because it speaks to the solo player in me. And Path of Exile is like kind of like almost the epitome of the action solo adventure game.
Sure.
I mean, you can play it in a party, but it's not the strongest way to play Path of Exile, I think.
Well, if you wanted the story.
one of the first things Chris asked me, Chris, the manager of Path of Exile, founder, when I first joined the company, right, welcome. I was like, hey, cool. What can Path of Exile maybe do you think, from your point of view? And I was like, better party PvP.
That's what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was like, oh, we tried PvP. But I don't see, like, okay, Path of Exile is a branched kind of game now. Like, there's the League thing and there's the new development stuff going on. And there's game modes that they kind of have coming out once in a while.
Yeah.
I don't think PvP necessarily has to be this horrendous deathmatchy adversarial kind of thing. You can have like a more co-op-y kind of style party play PvP that's like groups of people and or even events.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's not about like my level 90 character is going to get slaughtered immediately and people get afraid of that or something like that. I think that's the fear is that if you're solo playing your way through a game and then you have to PvP, it's like people are just like, why? It doesn't make any sense, right? So, but if there's some sort of, like, there's a lot of popular PvP games out there, why can't Path of Exile kind of get its head around it?
Couldn't speak to that.
Yeah. I mean, you just kind of branch the game a little bit, right? So you make a game mode that works for some people and not for others.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. Like, apparently Baldur's Gate 3 has multiplayer.
Right.
I don't know how it works because
like
I'm playing it by myself, right?
Right.
So I have no idea what you're supposed to do in the multiplayer. But we have parties in Path of Exile, but I've never done it.
Right. Okay.
Like, except at work. Like, I've never done it for my on actual account.
When you talk about Baldur's Gate doing it, is it a similar kind of multiplayer?
I think it's
you're in a party.
Yeah, I think it's meant to be oriented more towards social stuff in like the traditional RPG sense, where people talk to each other as they play. Yeah. As opposed to just.
But do you still have those story interactions and then forking stories with a party? I don't
think so. Yeah.
Would the story even hold up in that situation? You have this one guy making all the decisions for the party.
I haven't tried it.
Okay.
They're betaing this stuff anyway. Like, they're in early access, and the initial response I've read is that the multiplayer's a bit fuzzy.
Yeah, because of that.
Yeah, because they're just kind of let's just say they're experimenting it out still, because it looks like they are.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not.
I wouldn't even know how you do that, like logistically.
I'm kind of wondering, like, when I get there, the first thing I'm going to do is like spend ages figuring out what the hell they've been doing. Yeah. Like, I know they have very strong mocap and character dialogue. I mean, they're rendered characters. The detail on the models and stuff is pretty nice and all that.
Right.
I mean, it's a whole different department than the terrain and all that. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, they have studios in different parts of the world. Yeah. And, grinding gears is, like I mentioned about a medieval monastery, that's real insulated. Yeah. There's a story, I can't remember the name of it, but there's this big science fiction book where they have a monastery where it's actually a sci-fi story, but there's a monastery in it, and they have like layers of the monastery, and they open the gates for the outer rim it's like every year, for the inner second ring it's like every 15 years, and the middle ring is, and in the middle is like, but they open only once every 100 years or something like that. Like self-contained little world. Yeah. The whole point of it is it's like an isolated bubble. Yeah. So it's kind of like grinding gear within New Zealand, within Henderson. Henderson's the village of West Auckland. Yeah. It's a kind of forest surrounded little hamlet that hobbits live in.
It's a suburb.
Yeah. and then you have
Auckland.
The island of New Zealand. Yeah. Two islands, but and it's so far from everywhere else. It's like, in that way, protected and isolated. Sure. And then if you look at there's this picture of like Mexico City, I think. Yeah. I don't know where I saw it. Recently, I saw it. It's like imagine a hillside that goes over into a valley, goes up another hill, goes into a valley like a wave. Yeah. 5 or 6 deep hills, right? Okay. Covered with buildings. Really packed closely together. No fucking
slums kind of thing.
No parks, no trees, no maybe a tree here and there. Right? Okay. But literally just like houses. This isn't like slums. This is just like say your house. Yeah. But packed.
Just with rings of like different stages of development.
And not much traffic because it's so packed, right?
I see.
So how do they get around? I have no idea. But like millions of people, like density wise. So Europe is a lot like that. Belgium is where I'm going. Also quite dense and buildings very terraced.
Yeah.
So houses packed together, quite thin houses, maybe like 3 stories tall but thin, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why they're so super worried about COVID is because they have high density.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So if in New Zealand, like you've got like this psychologically built-in space. I like large spaces and open space and trees and
Yeah, of
and
course.
all that. And like most of the world is not like that.
Huh.
It's a very urbanized world we live in.
I'm sure they have city planning in Belgium.
Well, have you seen like photos of like Manhattan Island, whatever they call it?
No, I don't think so.
New York's main kind of financial hub.
I probably have seen.
Yeah, there's like this. It's just like a science fiction landscape. It's this concrete buildings, right? It's like people live in.
Oh, skyscrapers you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to mention chicken coops immediately after New York, but there it is.
Yeah.
So like the.
Dude, I've been to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Like, I know what you're.
Man, Hong Kong has got that in an insane degree.
Yeah.
So like I found like Kuala Lumpur was quite jungly, right? So it's kind of nice. It's busy and a large population, but it's quite dispersed throughout a nice scenery.
Yeah.
Moscow's got these massive state structures, like 12-lane highways through the center of the city.
Right, okay.
And you can cross underneath like these massive
It's pretty sweet.
highways in the middle of the city, and people work underground and all this kind of weird shit.
Jeez.
It's super. When I first went to Moscow and walked underneath the street, and there's like old ladies selling cigarettes in these little stalls that are like smaller than this room that we're in now.
Yeah.
And they spend the whole day in them with a little window.
Oof.
And the window itself is like framed by all the cigarettes and stuff that people can buy, right?
Jeez.
So it's just a slot.
Yeah.
like literally a scene out of
Those
a movie.
people, yeah.
And I was like, this is like some kind of weird hellscape.
But
Because not only is it that, it's like cold and wet and grimy. And,
but isn't that
not
also...
because Moscow people are wet and cold and grimy. It's the weather is coming down the
of
stairs
course.
and,
but
and it's super hard to clean.
You want to have that sheltered from the environment, the weather, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have guys working construction outdoors in the middle of the winter.
Yeah,
it's pretty hardcore. And I mean, all I'm saying is like I'm coming from this originally village, almost like medieval level kind of hobbit land to I mean medieval in the sense of nice fairy tales as opposed to medieval like brutally.
Yeah. Castles and stuff.
Yeah. In a way, the urban landscapes of those cities are more medieval in terms of how harsh they are.
Yeah.
And it could easily get worse with like
the COVID situation,
economic breakdowns and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of hard to talk about economic breakdowns personally because like when I see all the cool things that are being developed all around, I'm like, things are going well. I mean, but then there's like social welfare stuff where certain stratas of society just obliterated pretty harshly.
You're moving for employment, so I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm sure you've like done a little bit of research as well.
Yeah, it's a kind of selfish conversation. It feels a little bit like, but I mean, the storytelling part of this is that like when I first went overseas, I felt like 12 years.
Yeah.
I was like a backpacker, not even that privileged status.
Yeah.
It was like a struggle for survival with getting by and even like relying on goodwill of people quite a lot.
Right.
Whereas now I'm going from a position I've never had, which is like
you've got a little bit saved away.
I got money saved up and I've got a job there, and I can drive now, which I couldn't do previously.
Cool.
Like just driving opens up your world if you're spending like I didn't start to learn to drive till I was 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my flatmate, he's a Chinese guy, still can't drive, but he's got his license.
Yeah.
But he's like, it insulates the world around you pretty
I know.
hard, So I'm like, dude, just keep going. learn to drive, and then your world will open up. And, But I really felt that it did anyway. I was scared to learn to drive for quite a while.
Yeah, jeez. What made you learn to drive? I'll tell you.
I saw a stupid-looking person driving. I thought, if they can do it, I can do it.
Where I'm from, like people, as soon as they turn 15, were like applying to get driver's license.
Yeah, my brother and sister were in that category of person that just for some reason managed to.
Everyone was doing it.
They got jobs earlier than me.
Yeah.
They learned to drive earlier than me. I'm like the youngest, so I'm like the renegade culprit in all the troubles, and
You're the kid that acts out.
Totally. And I embrace that, and I actually kind of want to return to that.
Yeah.
I want to be the maverick guy instead of the person who is like, you know, in D&D they have chaotic, evil, true, lawful, what is it?
Lawful evil.
Lawful, good, chaotic, neutral. You know, I'm chaotic, neutral, I guess. the middle of the mischief.
Yeah.
But I'm not like ill intention to anybody, right?
I always find it weird with the family dynamic where, okay, maybe your older sibling kind of is the pace car, right? They do quite well.
Yeah.
They set themselves as like a really good example for the following kids. But then the next one down is like, I'm not going to do what they're doing. I'm going to figure out my own way.
Yeah.
But then you get these different tiers of... Because I feel like I'm the same as you, where definitely in my household, everyone went through university and pursued industrial design, transport design, and all these really cool like endeavors. And I was the one in my family that was like, I like computers, man. Like, I'm just going to go this way.
Yeah, but computer games.
Yeah.
The illicit pleasure.
Yeah. But,
like,
but
not even with any civic benefit.
yeah, it's all entertainment.
Yeah, entertainment is a massively important thing in life these days.
I think so.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about my brother a little bit, but it's I've been super bad about my family for, you know, most of my life, because I was like, I don't know, like my brother was into maths and stuff, and that put me off maths, and that's kind of regret now, because like, I'm bad at maths still to this day, and
you realize how important like a math foundation is.
Yeah, maths and physics is like, physics I can kind of start getting my head around, but math I still find it very difficult. But he was really good at it.
Yeah.
But I found it was super fucking hard to get along with.
Your brother?
Yeah, he was like 4 years older than me. I think it's regular in a lot of families where there's like sibling rivalry.
Yeah, I definitely had it with the brother just older than me.
Yeah, and my family was actually, it turned out, it got worse than that last year.
Oh, jeez.
After a while, it's really hard to. I mean, this is not his fault.
Yeah.
We're talking me being like a little monster.
Yeah, a shitbag.
Yeah. But he's awkward.
Oh, so looking back on it now, you kind of realise that about yourself? Okay.
Oh, I knew it at the time even. Like.
But you were just acting out anyway?
Yeah, it's like, I lacked social skills completely when I was young. Right? Yeah. So, I made his life pretty grim.
Because
I think his life even continued to be grim after I was like long gone elsewhere.
Right.
Because of the effect on him.
Because of the psychological damage you did to your brother.
But it was mutual. Like, it wasn't like a one-sided street. It's just like I reacted quite heavy in a not very. No, there's no reconciliation there at all. You know, so we still find it super awkward to be around each other.
Jeez. Yeah. Okay.
Which is bad, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I get a lot of fun with my sister, but we don't really see each other too much.
And
my parents are deceased from this life. You know?
Yeah.
I was overseas when my mother died. She got cancer. My sister kind of witnessed through that.
Yeah. You didn't come back.
I came back like just too late.
Oh,
so,
no.
They'd already kind of had the funeral, and I was kind of,
Yeah.
Oops.
Were you close with your mother?
Yeah, I'd say me and my mum got along pretty well.
Yeah.
So she suffered a lot, like I said, about me being a little monster. she was pretty patient handling that.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, like you know, autistic kids are hard to deal with.
Hmm.
I'm kind of like that category, I think. Like I didn't realize it when I was young, but
yeah. Well, it sounds like you kind of figured it out when you started looking towards these leadership kind of, you know, those YouTube videos.
Yeah, so
that interest.
I mean, we're talking like a 30-year time span.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're not the same person you were when you were a kid.
Of course.
But you remember it, right? You still kind of, you know, you're sitting, I don't know, you're in the shower, say, and you remember something sparkly clearly that you might have forgotten about for quite a while.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, oh, that was me.
Yeah. Man, I was an asshole.
Yeah. It wasn't even that I was an asshole. It was just like, I just sort of stepped into the troubles. You know, I wasn't walking around like...
It's so different from my upbringing. Three brothers, me being the second youngest. But I went... I guess I was always kind of social throughout school. And then right after, well, during high school, I got a job at McDonald's and ended up becoming a manager there, and just worked part-time while studying 3D and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because, you're still young, 17, 18, and you're having to deal and be responsible for other ratback 16-year-olds, people that have just kind of got a job and they're still trying to figure out who they are. It was really interesting to observe that and also kind of play a part in these people. So that kind of learning of having to deal with people, I think I had early exposure to that, which I think right now has benefited me, especially being where I am now at Reiniger.
I think young people getting a job builds them pretty good into adults.
I think so.
I didn't get a job till I was 28.
Oh, jeez.
Like, I studied for 8 years.
Yeah.
Which is expensive and still a problem.
Yeah, dude,
But, like, to get back to the brother thing, like, why I brought it up, is, like, one of the things that I found really hard to deal with was, like, when someone opinionates really heavily and strongly on just any opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of like, maybe they know some stuff about a topic. And okay, maybe they know some stuff about a topic, but the opinion becomes like, well, strong.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of like, well, here we are just
arguing over it.
Listening to some authority voice. And I'm like, dude, today talking, I'm trying to not like be an authority on any I don't want to like say, oh, this opinion is general to everybody. Like, this is definitely not. I'm trying to like only limit myself to like a few very safe statements about like my personal experience.
Sure.
And it's I don't know if it's interesting to anybody at all.
I think it's interesting.
But I'd rather do that than like start like
putting your foot down.
A lot of podcasts are like opinions on how the world should be, or like about how some physics thing is correct or not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And actually, people don't really know a lot of stuff.
There are typically,
or they do, but it's hard to explain.
There are good conversations about these things.
Yeah. But I'm super into like I'm trying to figure out like not scientifically figure out stuff the way a proper scientist does, but
for yourself.
Yeah, for myself, trying to learn more about physics, and I mean, it's almost like a fantasy world, right?
What do you mean?
Like, okay, so you might say, where do I start to learn physics? If you stop physics when you're high school, say, right? And suddenly you're starting to get interested in it because of you're pinging off a bunch of stuff, right? And you say, well, where do I actually learn? One of the nice things you can do is like start to study measurements of small things. Like there's a sort of scale of like what you can see as a human, right? And then there's like what you can feel with your fingertips, and then there's like what you need actual instrumentations to control to a certain scale.
Yeah.
And starting to learn about small scale stuff.
Yeah.
Is a really nice way to start learning about physical laws or truths or fundamentals or whatever you might call this kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I'm kind of interested in hobbycraft kind of way at the moment.
Right.
But like I wouldn't like to say, oh, this podcast is a platform to spout out some opinions on like how physics is.
Right.
I'm like the most noob person on this topic.
But would you even be that bold?
No, not at all. But so if I was talking about say something in physics with my brother,
yeah,
he'd be like a professor to me, and I'm like, dude, you don't know less in physics about even less than me. Right? So
yeah,
I'm kind of like I've always been because I sort of noticed this. I was like, I kind of want to not do that to other people.
I see. Yeah, I got you.
But it's kind of like, shouldn't I have something to say to the world? I don't.
Maybe you'll find that out later. Yeah. But between you and your brother, you said that he had a maths background and a physics background. You just want to talk about physics together.
When you learn physics, you have to start learning calculus and like derivatives and stuff like this, which I know the names of.
Okay, cool. That's a good start.
But he could do all that stuff. He's actually an electrician now, and he does stuff with solar panels and stuff.
Cool.
Which is kind of interesting, but
He installs
he
solar panels?
installs them. It's like he's an expert in solar panels, right?
Mm.
I mean, he knows probably quite a lot about it. But I saw this documentary. This guy called Ollie something. He did this documentary with Michael Moore.
Mm.
It's about resources on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy Ollie, someone, is basically saying solar panel industry is kind of like not actually that sustainably friendly
Yeah.
at all.
It's because of the materials that they make the panels
materials and the way they
the lifetime.
the way they roll it out into the world and
Yeah.
industrial reasons.
Yeah.
And it's kind of because I was always kind of proud that at least my brother's doing like solar panels.
Yeah,
because
good-
they're
good work.
like, and then they're cool, and then I was like, oh damn, they're not that cool. So yeah, what I'm trying to illustrate is like, when you kind of generalize maybe it's people from your family or whatever, you generalize them to other people, and there's a lot of expert talk at work. Like people that feel that they know what's correct or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of interested in like the learning thing with my brother is very hard emotionally, but the learning about communication is sort of listening to people and like speaking clearly and all this kind of stuff. Like assertiveness as well is a thing related to communication, where maybe someone's putting you on the back foot and like actually disparaging you or whatever, or this kind of stuff, calling you a jerk or whatever.
Who would do that?
Who would do that? Yeah, so like I think I mentioned to you one day, like in England, my ancestry is English. A lot of the people actually have a adversarial professional life. Their communication at work is quite based on like almost a conflict or argument or insulting each other almost.
Yeah.
And for me, with the sort of more meek, let's say, style, I found it real shocking when I was there, right? And it made me scared of communicating with people. Learning to consciously be aware of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so when you're in an adversarial, or let's say a narcissistic conversation, or even a conversation with someone who just doesn't stop talking, like learning how to handle that is kind of a beneficial thing to
Skill.
Take the time to get a little bit of tool set for.
Sure.
Yeah. So I was trying to spiral around to that kind of stuff is like one of the concerns of like the last year that I've had with relation to work.
Yeah.
Because we're a bunch of very intense and cerebral people all working in like deadlines and all this kind of stuff and pressure mounts and stuff. I sort of blew my top at Dan one day. Dan is one of my colleagues in the team.
Another level designer.
For a very small reason, and I didn't really resolve it. Like I should have apologized about it. Like afterwards, I made a point of like seeing that everything was all right, and he's pro. He's studied business and his communication is high. Right?
Yeah.
But like I didn't do the polite thing, so I kind of regret that.
That sucks.
Yeah. I should have. I mean, I could still do it, but I should have done it right immediately.
Yeah.
I remember one day Sam and me had a tiff, a misunderstanding. It was to do with work pressure. When you get like an argument at work, it's usually not so much to do with the people. It's more to do with the high pressure of the work situation.
Sure. Yeah.
The deadline, basically.
A lot of things fall by the wayside when there is time pressure.
Yeah.
You're maybe trying to be word efficient,
Yeah.
and it isn't happening.
Yeah. So me and Sam were miscommunicated. Actually, we wouldn't actually argue. We just got a little like confused at each other.
Yeah.
Hot tempered kind of or grumble.
Yeah.
And he apologized like immediately afterwards, and I was like, "It isn't a problem actually, and it's nice that you said so."
Yeah.
And it helps. Like it makes a difference. So I should have taken the chance to do that.
With Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think he might have felt hurt.
Yeah.
But I also felt hurt because it was a thing that happened that I was like, this shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
It's an incident, so it's hard to describe on people listening will be like, well, so.
Yeah, you're describing this vague thing that happened and you didn't apologize.
Yeah. So.
You've obviously kept this for a while. Like, you and Dan are okay now?
Yeah, totally. The thing is, like, over time, people that you're around like a long, long, long time, maybe you handle in a different way than people that are, you know, regular strangers or something like that. So maybe there's like comfort zones are different.
Well, one thing I don't like about work is where people kind of just not like walking over and talking to someone isn't encouraged. I know I try to encourage people to do this, and it means just you know, getting out of your chair and talking to someone about a thing you may be working on.
There's some cost stuff to do with like the needs versus the cost of interrupting people. I think when you go to talk to people, like, okay, I'll use myself as an example again. When you come to talk to me, you're usually coming over with something that's important, so it's worth that.
Yeah.
But you know, like if someone's deeply into something, the casual interruption can actually be costly to what they're trying to figure out. You know?
I see. If you guys happen to work together a lot, it is very important just to know like how each of you communicate with each other. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And to develop this kind of understanding between yourselves, because that kind of language doesn't exist until you start talking to people.
Yeah, I would say I definitely learned a lot from observing Dan and Josiah. I'm talking about guys at work, but the department that I work in. I learned a lot about my craft from watching them do their stuff.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
And it's cool to hear that you learned a lot about yourself. Dude, it sucks like that you're leaving.
Yeah, but it's also cool.
I am excited for you.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and you get to go on an adventure again.
Yeah. The rate of attrition in our company is quite low, I think, for a game studio, which is a positive thing usually in a company. Like who was the last person who hit it off? I know Pierrick is this guy, is a French guy that came as a visual effects guy.
Yeah.
He hit it off to sort of similar way, like jumped to Europe and jumping around.
He's back in France now.
He's stuck by COVID and
right.
He's still working from home and doing all that kind of stuff. But it's, you know, we keep in touch.
Cool. Virtual
world is different to what it used to be. Yeah, yeah, you can talk to people and share stuff and all that kind of thing. Mostly it's like trading, like checking comparisons and stuff like that. You know, sometimes it's sorting out a technical problem, but often it's just like, you know, what do you think of this?
Oh, we're just getting an opinion on it.
Getting an opinion on it. It's just a second opinion.
Yeah. I
think like you can do that by chat pretty well, and we do quite a bit of that.
That's cool.
Yeah. And sharing jokes, obviously.
Yeah, I love just catching up with that guy.
Yeah.
He's really interesting, and it sucked when he went too.
Yeah.
I'm one of those guys at Grinding Gear that, you know, I've seen so many people just leave.
Yeah. Like the weird thing is, like, I don't really feel like I'm totally replaceable.
You're really selling yourself short.
It's this funny thing, like it felt like I thought I knew a lot about game development when I started at Grinding Gear. It quickly became apparent that I had much to learn, right? And it still feels like I do what I can. I do some stuff, but it's not stuff that actually couldn't be done by another person. Like there's nothing vital about it. Like if Reese left, it'd be like the world would end and like like there'd be like a collapse of space and time.
Yeah,
it'd be like that. He's like pivotal to the flavor of the company or the nature of the company. Definitely not in that kind of category.
Okay.
Yeah. That's one thing I like about working with him. Is like you really get to see what is a top programmer like, and yeah, he's from my town. Like,
oh, is that true?
Yeah, I never knew him when I was there. Like he's I don't know if he's older than me or just a different. He went to a different school. But yeah, I have a suspicion that I had seen him around. But yeah, like we were gonna mention about Dunedin.
Yeah, I was angling that way.
Yeah, Dunedin is my hometown, and it's like the south of New Zealand. And when I was a kid there, I thought it was like a big city, but it's not. It's like a 100,000 people town.
Right.
But it's a university city.
Yeah.
Both of my parents worked in the university.
Okay.
So I was exposed to that kind of environment really young.
Yeah.
Like my dad was
burning couches, that kind of thing.
Actually, yeah, they have that in the student district.
Yeah, of course.
You can walk through the rows of houses where the students live days after a party, and there's just like, post-apocalyptic stuff all over the place.
Everything's on fire.
Yeah, they had that, but it's still a very pretty town.
There was that movie made about it, Scarface.
Yeah.
You must have been all about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So my mother was in anthropology department. Anthropology is like, well, let's just say it's the study of bones, but it's human history, and they had like labs full of like,
preserving them and storing them.
Yeah, like New Zealand wildlife and then
Gotcha.
whatever they could find of like ancient stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it was super interesting. I kind of patrolled around there when I was like
yeah, that sounds super
12-year-old, like causing trouble and looking at stuff and all that. The people when I was a kid looking at the adults who were there, they seemed either super adult, like really formal and professorial or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they seemed like hippies or something, right?
Okay.
When I look at adults now,
yeah.
I just see people behaving like children. Yeah. When we converse to each other, it doesn't seem that
like
sophisticated, or we just talk. It just feels like the nature of people is slightly different than what I expected it would be.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something about that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a lack of the internet that kind of made the kind of behavior more homogenous.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, definitely. Like when I look at my parents, they could be from like another time.
Yeah.
Like behavior wise, thought pattern wise, I'm seeing things in my parents where they're just getting into like watching YouTube videos, and I'm like, hey man, this may not be good information. Like I know you're really up to date on it, but it may be like slanting your opinion a certain way. Anyway, they can't seem to like scrutinize news sources. It seems to be the thing that I'm.
Are your parents like the TV generation, or the slightly?
They're a little older. I think they were born in the 40s.
Right. My parents' generation. Then.
Yeah.
My dad was 1945, so yeah.
Yeah, I think my parents had too. Yeah. Like the internet really came in and is very much shaping a lot of the topics that they'd like to talk about nowadays.
Have you heard this thing where it's kind of a joke, but it's actually bitter as well?
Okay.
There's something kind of nasty in this thing. Where if you're a smart person, let's say you're average smartness, right?
Yeah.
then most, like half the people you meet are going to be dumber than you.
Half
right?
the people, yeah. And the other half will be smarter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's how it works.
It's kind of, most people fall on the halfway point, right? Well, we like to think we're in the smarter category, but it's actually like within grinding gear games, if you measure smartness, I'm not in the smart category at all. Like this is no way.
It's such a bullshit.
I lack massive like compartments of stuff that other people just take for granted.
But have you also seen that thing?
I actually feel like literally brain damaged or
when talking to some
mental
people?
retardation level kind of differences between me and other people.
Really?
Yeah. They're so smart.
Dude, it's a different kind of smart.
I mean, it's a discipline thing. Like they've had 20 years of doing whatever they do, and I've had time doing whatever I do.
Sure.
But I've always felt like when I do stuff, I'm doing it in a clumsy, iterative kind of, I won't say artistic way, because I've seen artists who are way more practical and efficient at their process than what I ever was, right?
Right.
I feel like I've just caveman style tinkering around, whereas I see people who are super efficiently building
you're
actually
looking
good
at specialists
stuff.
though. You're looking at
that's what I'm
specialists,
saying.
but you're also looking at and comparing yourself to these people that work, and programs are very specific in the way they speak. They're like when you describe Reese, he's very much this is what I want to say kind of guy. But when you talk to an artist, and I consider you're an artist, obviously. You're thinking a little different. It's a different, like it's that right brain left brain thing.
Yeah. So I tried to learn programming in the sort of traditional sense of, you get a book on JavaScript or something like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't manage too well. I found this book on I don't know what it's called, but it's more like how programmers think and like programming.
They have a book on that.
let's say policies or something like this, like a kind of what makes a good programmer versus not a good programmer.
Okay.
And that actually started me off in a nice way. I don't remember the actual name of it, and it doesn't matter at all. There's a bunch of books like that. But like actual languages and stuff, I found super hard to get into. The only one I've ever really made any decent, let's say, discoveries and progress in, it was Unreal Script.
Yeah.
Right.
The blueprint.
Well, in UDK they actually had Unreal Script, which was like a text formatted thing, and then they had Kismet, which was a visual thing. So I started with Kismet, and I gradually started to pick apart Unreal Script from examples and all this.
Gotcha.
And then they switched to Unreal, which was like, so Unreal Script just went out the window.
Yeah.
So I was like, damn. It's like when you learn Action Script in Flash, right? Yeah. And then they just trash it.
Yeah.
It's like they went on to some other thing, right?
Yeah.
Now they have Unreal Motion Graphics, right, which is their UI format, and it's nice to use. It's a web kind of oriented. Well, it's a screen based arrangement platform, if that's the right word, with layers and stuff. It's super cool. And so when I learned Unreal, I actually focused on UI and saving like game data.
Right. Okay.
And stuff like the blueprint stuff of like data tables. Data tables like our configurator, which is like basically like all the items in the game, and what are their properties, what are their names, how do you actually look them up by an ID or whatever, right? And then all the arguments or properties or whatever you might call it, they get kind of put into tables. So I learned how that works in Unreal, but I couldn't generalize it into our game at all. Like, well, we have this like thing to do with C++ being like it's a source thing, and only certain programmers actually. I'm just not required to do it, right? So we also have this kind of Unreal Script-like thing, which is, we call it GL, but it's a sort of simple version of coding where you're kind of hooking up connections between different game objects. And like Josiah's super good at it. Dan's pretty good at it, well, good at it compared to me. I'm just like, I really struggle to even get my head around that at all. I got to the point where I could like make animations play. Yeah.
It's always good.
Or maybe make something render or not render.
Okay.
Like, when you
take its skin mesh off.
You disable an entrance.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Those are very basic. In Unreal, that's something I can do without any trouble whatsoever. Yeah. Right? But in our game, it feels kind of hard, like unnecessarily cumbersome. Well, but it's actually a super efficient
way to do it.
Yeah. Because it's lightweight. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're a programmer, it's as easy as pie. But for me, I guess I need a visual language or something like that.
Yeah.
So I found blueprints to be really friendly to learn. Yeah. And one of the reasons for that was because, like you mentioned about videos and stuff.
Yeah.
UDK had an enormous, well-curated set of tutorials for learning that stuff.
Yeah.
I was on the beta for Unreal, which was this thing called Rocket.
Sweet.
I was like, man, that's a catchy name. And it was quite hard to learn because at the time there wasn't documentation or anything.
Yeah. Well, how'd you learn it?
Well, for some reason they sent it to me. I think it was because I was a teacher.
Right.
And I managed to get some news about it, and I wrote to them and said, can I join the beta? And they sent it to me. And so I actually, used it in class. Yeah. And then it developed. They released the full thing. Yeah. And at first you had to pay for it, and the school where I was teaching was kind of like, grumble, pay for this. And then they released it for free. Like,
oh wait, after you actually bought it.
Do you remember there was the Unreal is now free?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, the kite demo.
Yeah, that was like a massive ground shift. And
of course.
Unreal 2 was like licensed pretty much.
Yeah.
It was hard to
That was the $1 million engine.
Yeah, engines were really obscure to me when I was like wanting to get into games.
Yeah.
Like Tomb Raider 3 had an engine, or an editor, sorry, not an engine.
Yeah.
It had the available editor where you could actually make your own Tomb Raider map.
Right.
But it was impossible to figure out how to use. There was like a couple of PDFs on making, they call it BSP, right? It's a little binary space partition box thing. So you could make these cube levels. But if you wanted to do stuff like a triggered event with water going up and down and all the cool stuff you'd actually imagine, it just was nothing, right? So I failed badly to get in. Like most people would say, I get onto games through modding. I was like, fuck modding, this isn't possible.
Because you came at it from the Tomb Raider angle?
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to make games, and like we had a a Saveun computer, which is one of those with a green screen. At the time, my uncle had an Apple IIe.
Right.
So my dad and him would have like arguments on which one's better, like an actual PC versus Apple.
Yeah.
And so on the Saveun thing, they had it was DOS, and you could actually you get these magazines with type it out kind of style things, and like Clan of the Cave Bear and all this kind of weird like text based. So I tried making a text-based adventure, but with a few pictures. And I was trying to get the pictures like a gate to let open.
Yeah.
There's this thing with level designers and gates. So like way back when I was literally 12 or 11 like years old, and trying to like an 11-year-old now, I'm like Still
dealing with this.
Yeah, because like I'm often jealous of people at work when they're playing with like Substance Painter and stuff, like because. In Substance Painter, you want to paint with metal. You paint with metal.
Yeah. You
like,
just
in
select
the old
metal
days,
brush.
there wasn't anything like paint with metal. It was like you had to like make it look like metal. Somehow, and there was little information on how to make it look like metal.
You bump the spec value up. That's how you make it look like metal.
Yeah. I mean, the cynical argument about this is, you're not really learning about the real properties of metal, like the light.
Which is why PBR is such an awesome shift.
Yeah, the artists we have at work are like they're like way over that hump, like
the PBR thing.
Yeah, like when you look at Dane's stuff, and it's like it's metal that looks like it's a certain age, and in the lighting that it's in, it looks like it's like dullness or whatever is correct and all that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's fucking amazing. I can't achieve that. I can do like storyboard quality graphics now. That's about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I even don't have the patience. I sit down for if I sit down for more than an hour on a picture,
right,
I start going crazy from like wanting to do something else.
Right, this is why doodling is so cool.
Yeah, I have books of doodles. Yeah, doodles are the best. I often wonder, like next to my desk there's a book. It's actually full of just like stuff that looks like a madman drew it. Like it literally doesn't look like it relates to anything.
Yeah,
and it doesn't. It's not readable. Like it looks kind of nice as a sort of graphic.
Okay,
page to page. Looks kind of cool.
Do you remember seeing like Sean's drawings? Yeah. It's cool that you keep you still draw. I think it's so valuable to use like a visual communication medium and to iterate like that is really powerful.
Yeah.
I really hope you go further into that with your.
Yeah, I'd love to get back to doing, let's just say environment concept art for now, but more like a lot of the requirements of the game industry is when you do a concept art, I'm specifically thinking of the stuff we're doing, where they're needing to send it to an outsourcer, and you pretty much have to do a full render.
I don't think so, but keep going.
But that's what is happening in our company, right?
No.
Like for props and stuff, they almost have like a photographic looking example.
Some, yes.
Yeah. Whereas I tend more towards like that, Fengzhu. Fengzhu is this guy in Singapore that has a school for concept art, which I'm always impressed by. And his stuff's more that kind of grayscale Scott Robertson traditional media kind of look.
Yeah.
I'm way more into that aesthetically.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of halfway in between digital, because I use digital tools. I don't use Copic markers and all that because they're expensive. And,
and they run out.
And you have to buy paper for it. Like the Copic markers, like I don't know how much they cost, but like in Malaysia they're super cheap. So there it was great to use them.
Yeah. But
here in New Zealand they're like, I don't know, $100 for a set or something.
Yeah.
And then you have to buy special paper, and that's expensive.
Yeah. Okay.
And you use it up really, really fast, right? So it's it's just not, it's cost prohibitive to even draw.
Yeah. Here in New Zealand.
So why not just use I'm quite into Procreate on the iPad. I think it's nice because you can play it back. You can see a little video of your stuff.
It makes a really nice GIF.
Yeah, it's cool. And obviously I have a license of ZBrush, which I hardly ever use, but I learned how to use ZBrush when I was teaching. Yeah. But I've never been paid to make models because there's always people around that are just way better at it. So
but
there's no need for me to do it.
You also know that like practice is good and like it makes perfect.
Yeah. Well, I thought about that for a long time. Like
practice makes perfect.
Yeah. I'm like, oh damn, I have a ZBrush license. It's kind of $1,000. I should be using ZBrush every day. But actually, it's not really like that because
it's a one-time thing.
I pay $10 a month to Microsoft for Word over a few years. That's adding up, right? So the argument there is I should be writing every time, right? So what it boils down to is I sort of thought, what can I actually produce by myself? And writing was what I kind of gravitated towards in the end.
Yeah.
I tried comic books. And I did a comic, and I kind of liked it, but nobody else was into it.
Okay.
I mean, that was a complicated kind of decision and everything, but so one day I asked Jackson. Jackson's a colleague, and we actually worked in a previous company, blah, blah, blah. But I asked him, like, if you were to write a book, what would you write about? And he was like, portals. And he sounded real sure of himself. So it's like, I've never even considered a book about portals before. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But actually, like, okay, so I went ahead and did this. But
interesting.
I
have a thing about portals.
During that, I heard that portal fiction is one of the most genre cliched. Publishers hate it.
Right. Okay.
They don't want.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, publishers don't want to hear your portal fiction story. But in the end, the story that I wrote, it has portals in it, and the way Path of Exile has portals in it, but they're not the point of the story, right? So, I started to get, like I was talking about physics earlier, I started to try to, like, get into a wizard kind of mindset of, like,
how to explain
how would a wizard try to explain, magic and phenomena and physics and stuff like that with their limited understanding. They don't have the tools that we have, right? So the point of the book is, like, there's the periodic table. So my book is, the first book is the Wizard's Harvest table, and it's about the table of runes that they use to make sense of demon magic. I don't know why I wrote about demons. that's like
demons are cool.
Well, the demons are like elves, right?
Well, they're very much
they mean different things to different people. When you say, "Oh, the book's about demons," most people would think, "Oh, you mean like demons in Baldur's Gate, right?" And I'm like, "No, that's not what I mean at all."
I'm picturing like hell demons, Satan, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is a fictional world, so it doesn't.
You were thinking monsters.
They're more like actual RPG monster demons,
okay,
to be honest. But let's say they're the fundamental creature of the world. They're what stuff is made out of before people came along,
right?
Like dinosaurs out of people, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So there are many different subspecies of demons.
Yeah, they're just older beings, and they look like monsters, so people think they are demons.
Okay.
But they're just a creature.
Cool.
And they have different lifespans and all that kind of stuff. It's one day you asked me, how does the magic work in your story? And I said, well, it just works. And you're
like every other fantasy.
Yeah. Well, there's this thing that I only learned this, like, the formal way to express this recently. It's like there's a hard science fiction and the soft science fiction. Like Star Wars is soft science fiction. And 2001 maybe is hard science fiction.
Yeah.
So there's the same thing with magic. Like, Sanderson is this very famous
Yeah,
guy.
I've heard this guy.
I have actually not read his stuff, but I did watch a talk he gave, which was quite interesting. As I understand it, he's a hard magic.
Yeah.
The rules are explicit and clear, and it follows them, in the narrative.
Yeah.
And then there's soft magic, like Dune, for example.
Is Dune soft?
I'm not too sure of the fundamental rules of Dune.
It's all about spices, is what I hear.
Yeah, but that they have the Bene Gesserits and stuff, like they're nuns effectively that have magic powers.
Right, but it's because
they're
of the
voodoo witches,
But that's because
that's
of the
about
spice,
all.
right?
That's about all you get. Yeah, it's ninja with spice, and you don't get all the rules explained to you. They're just a tradition, and they have like powers.
But
and they have this box you put your hand in, and it's like painful. That's like the what is it? The pivotal scene for the whole story, really. So,
with Dune, hold on, just going back there. Wait, the spice is a thing that like messes people up and gives them like psychic abilities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then people like OD on that stuff, and then you have this royal group of people that are just like out of their mind on spices.
Yeah. Well, also spices it's like the fuel of the pilot, or it forms the brain of the pilot of the spaceships that can interstellar flight.
Right.
And without it,
they're no good.
You don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's the basics of why Dune Planet is so special in that story. Right? What's really cool is we're going to get like a decent Dune movie. So
yeah, I'm excited for that.
I'm super excited for that because I was excited for Blade Runner and I was satisfied with it. I mean, it was not without problems, but it was still decent.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
We need more of that sort of stuff. I mean, I'm amazed at the stuff that gets turned into films. Like, why my books are not bad. Make them into films, let's say. or games or something. It's like I'm tired of seeing like really, really terrible stuff get made in films.
Yeah.
So fund me. I'm kidding here to some degree.
But have you thought of reading that guy's book with the hard magic?
People at work are always talking about it. At some point, I'm planning to.
Yep.
But yeah, it hasn't come my way yet. So the opposite in soft magic category is also like soft fantasy and hard fantasy. So Lord of the Rings is hard fantasy apparently, and
Harry Potter soft fantasy.
Studio Ghibli stuff like Spirited Away is soft fantasy.
Okay.
And there's a video on YouTube about this particular thing. It's really good analysis by a guy who's explaining, like Miyazaki himself is explaining this thinking.
I think you linked me to that.
Yeah, maybe. So what he says pretty much is, I want the freedom to be a little loose and fairy tale.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's totally the category I want to be in.
Yeah. Let's talk about art. Where are you with art?
Yeah.
Do you think you'll be using it a whole bunch for your new job?
I mentioned that I liked Edgar Degas. He was really into chalk. I tried out chalk rendering and stuff when I was younger.
Yeah.
And chalk is super satisfying to use. I'm not saying I'm going to jump into playing with chalk or anything, but it's like, it's amazing that you can use a crumbly, difficult to use medium to produce a great picture and all this kind of stuff. And I recently saw this like not really a biography, but more of a analysis of the life and times of Manet. Manet was like a precursor to the Impressionists.
Okay.
At the time that I was studying art at school and art school, I think it's maybe like your education exposure kind of thing. Like you get Impressionists kind of early, right? I learned a lot about Impressionism and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was going to look at Manet paintings and they were very strange.
Yeah.
They're kind of loaded with, the real life of the painter encoded in the work kind of stuff.
I'm trying to think of a Manet.
Olympia is the one where there's a girl on a sofa and there's a black servant and there's a cat in it.
Okay.
It was shown in Paris at the salons and everybody freaked out because it was like roughly painted or something.
Okay.
So it was like, it's one of the world's most famous controversial paintings
Yeah.
of a naked lady.
Because it was going towards that abstract style?
Well,
why was it so controversial?
They say the Mona Lisa's expression has got this kind of hauntingness. So the Olympia facial expression is quite mocking, and
right. Okay.
so everyone's kind of affronted by this.
I see.
Yeah. So that's one of them.
Are you trying to say that you're thinking about getting into oil painting again?
No. I kind of go, well, we don't really have that anymore. Like,
yeah.
You go on ArtStation and you see these amazing, technically
people are still doing that.
Technically great paintings or let's say images.
Yeah.
A lot of it's got the digital stamp pretty strongly.
Yeah.
There's traditional media categories on ArtStation as well, I think, but there's not a lot of it that super grabs the world's attention these days.
It is very much digital, and
there's so much amazingness to it. It's kind of like, why doesn't it grab your attention? A lot of it's like, it feels like these are samples of like their studies or their samples of folio pieces or whatever, as opposed to like great works of art, let's say. So I'm kind of interested in.
You're saying like to have this timeless quality?
Yeah, or just deep messages that blow everybody out of the water.
It's so difficult because of, if you have, I don't know, 1 million of the best artists on the planet making awesome art, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Look at ArtStation. Like, that's what it looks like.
True. Well, when I was trying to figure out what art was, I noticed there's like the sort of graphic design and illustration oriented crowd, and then there's like, what you might call the fine art oriented crowd.
Yeah.
So there's the nobility and poverty, usually, of the fine art crowd compared to the financial success but lame boringness of the commercial.
Who's an example of lame success? Would you consider like Banksy one of those guys?
I don't know much about Banksy. I don't think anybody does.
Have you seen Exit through the gift shop?
I was going to say that is the thing I like most about Banksy stuff, to be honest. That's the provocative thing that I'm talking about, like the thing that just makes a massive impact on people that come across that.
Yeah.
everybody I've talked to that's seen that film, just because that film was intense and amazing. You know what I mean?
Well, that character was awesome.
I like finding that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's nothing to do with what I try to make at all.
Yeah.
Like I keep referring to the tinker and everything. But,
yeah.
Maybe one day I might manage to pull off a cool thing, but
I
like to think that my book has like kind of got an element of that, but I haven't. And Reese is the only one that has given me like actual super positive feedback. Everyone else is kind of like,
I have, and I'm not a very strong reader anyway.
So I don't think reading now is actually a thing.
Reading,
literally, it seems to be super
audiobook oriented.
Hard to even sell. Like, I'm ethically against selling print books in a ways, but
because of materials.
Yeah,
okay.
Totally.
But you're okay with like server farms pumping out and storing like audiobooks and delivering that. You see what I'm saying?
I guess there's an argument there. That's like the Elon Musk thing. Like, he says we're environmentally friendly, but his factories are actually
producing these batteries and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Greta Thunberg has got a better argument about that kind of stuff than me. I'm not the expert on resource management, but like information has to exist somewhere, and I think that digital formats are better than print.
Yeah, definitely.
Like even you can put a book in a shelf, and after a while, it's no longer useful.
Yeah.
Whereas digital, so long as you don't put on a tape
or a magnet on it.
Digital formats are around forever, and that's the point, right? I think probably the cost of a data center is relatively good.
Yeah, compared to chopping
the
a tree down.
equivalent amount of data on paper.
Yeah, and shipping it around.
Yeah.
No, I'm with
you. So shipping books is another thing. It's prohibitively expensive to ship books.
Right.
So it's like, I'm not even going to try doing that. But, yeah. So I recorded, I didn't record it. I hired someone to narrate the audiobook that I did.
Yeah.
And they did a good job. But I don't know if the book's super presentable.
What way?
Well, we wanted to get like a voice which is like a lot of the characters are men and they have low voices and this guy's got quite a his name's Bjorn. He does game voiceovers and stuff.
Very cool.
Very, very good. But he's Swedish and English second language stuff. So the book's got that kind of like a
Swedish accent.
Great tonality, and his voice is clear, and he's also a radio announcer. So unlike me, he talks very clear. But the problem is sometimes you'll wreck a sentence because of basically
accent.
English as a second language stuff.
Yeah.
I would have to spend money to get retakes done to really get it good, and that takes time.
But does that take away from the actual content of the book?
I think that anything which is read where you maybe get jolted out of it is a problem. Right? So I think the recording is
for you personally.
A bit of that, yeah.
Like you envision it a certain way and it doesn't come across that way.
No, I mean like if you were a listener to it, you'd probably lose the thread of the flow of the story if you suddenly get hiccuped by basically mistakes, right? So
I see.
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether it's ready to go out, but my feeling is it needs more work.
Okay. Is it released?
There's an edit that's complete, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
I haven't tried to market it.
I see.
Marketing is also the bane of
you got to spend some money
creative
on
work, right?
Yeah.
You could complete a beautiful piece of work, and if you don't try to actually sell it, nobody in the world will know about it.
Yeah, I know.
So I think I definitely have that. That's a step I need to go figure out.
Marketing. You could always pay for it.
Yeah, I mean that's what marketing is.
Yeah.
But I have no experience at it. Yeah.
Facebook, bro. You just get on there.
Yeah, post a comment.
No, you can pay for ads, man.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so I've got 2 books in the audiobook. Yeah, so I'm kind of liking that. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is like embracing obscurity. There's a certain kind of what's the word? Let's say artistic nobleness about not caring about money or success or what other people even think.
Yeah.
And a lot of scientists and people that contribute to the field of their science or whatever are completely unknown. If you're in a field of particular, like say maths, so James Clerk Maxwell probably, right?
Sure.
He's electromagnetic forces guy. Right? But, you know, if you're not in that field, you probably don't.
Yeah.
And then it gets more, you know, most people only know a limited amount of stuff at best anyway.
Sure.
So embracing obscurity and like the village lifestyle is like, maybe it's to do with aging. It's like more and more tempting. And I think the reason it's more and more tempting is because like, you can, like, you know Dr. Seuss?
The guy with the hat?
Yeah, Cat and Hat guy. Apparently he did a lot of work that is like never seen publicly. And it's dark and personal and all that.
Right.
And, you know, you enjoy Dr. Seuss when you're a kid, but probably the more meaningful artist is more darker stuff, right?
Yeah.
And some of it's real moody. I mean, it looked like it was hobbycraft and tinkering around for him as well.
Right.
You know, I kind of like that more. Yeah.
That there's that darkness there.
Yeah. Well, there's this personal stuff behind what the world sees.
That's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
that was just the example that came to mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Embracing obscureness.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you get a hold of those things?
Get a hold of
those books. The other Seuss books.
Internet is.
Search
terms. Yeah, go look for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Way back earlier, we talked about Maxwell Render, and I was hoping we were gonna do a kind of video. One of the things Maxwell Render has is a gallery of like, you know, cool examples of people's work.
Yeah.
And one of them is like a thing that looks like a diatom, which is a kind of very small sea creature that you find at the bottom of the ocean. You can only see it under a microscope.
Right.
Or at least through a magnifying glass. I'm not sure. But anyways, so this thing is like a interpretation of a diatom.
Yeah.
It's got like displacement and hair, and it's a ball shape with like cool sci-fi looking thing. But it's rendered in a way that as if it was seen through the lens of a microscope, with that vignetting and you know, old like 19th century grayscale photos have got lots of hairs and the
just imperfections.
They're chemically produced pictures.
Yeah.
And then they have imperfections, yeah.
Yeah.
So the render captures a whole lot of that. And what it's trying to do really is capture the look of the illustrations by this guy called Ernst Haeckel, who was an illustrator for like natural history kind of stuff, where he would look through a microscope at a droplet of water or whatever and look at the creatures inside of it, or the diatoms or whatever. And there are all these crazy, outlandish, alien-looking patterns and structures that are just mind-blowingly detailed, like complicated, fractally kind of stuff. And you draw them meticulously, carefully. Yeah. You might want to look at this later. Cause
I'll put it on the episode.
I did a lot of like amazed looking at his work. I can't even say it was study, right? I was just like, when I was an art student, I was just blown away by this stuff. And the point, there's actually a BBC series on, I don't remember what it's, but it's basically about drawing, right? And it's all these weird edge cases of drawing, like this guy drawing through a microscope, or like the guy who drew really accurate pictures of the moon in the same kind of way, where he'd draw sections of the moon because a telescope, right? Yeah. And so he'd just draw a little section, then he'd compile it all into this massive, super accurate drawing of the surface of the moon. Yeah. So I really like that kind of stuff.
Do you think you'll end up wanting to pursue that at some point?
Well, I think I'd like to do it within the computer game context. Yeah. You know, whether it's a studio work where there's a bunch of people all driving towards something, or if it's a personal thing, I don't know.
Okay. Tom, I think we should wrap up.
Yeah, man. Well, we went this, right? You know how, like, I mean, podcasters got this thing where you start off with the basics and formals, and then you by the end, like a comedy show, you go into the really crazy end of the spectrum. Yeah, I think we did that.
Yeah, I think we definitely did that. Cool. I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you very much for tuning in. Email, all that good stuff. Tom, do you have like social media things that you want to plug? Maybe.
No,
not at all.
No. I mean, we can put in the comments if you're going to post any info with it. Yeah, we can. I post pictures of dogs on social media. So
okay.
It's not that.
Man, I think we're really going to miss you at Groningen.
I miss you guys too.
And it was really good working with you.
But I'll also like keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure.
I just probably won't be in the actual office chat.
Yeah. Good call. All right. See you, everybody. Bye.